What's going on, everybody? It is time for episode number 56 of Truth Will Set You Free. It's a lovely June evening for me out here in the Fort Worth, Texas area. We've got our typical hosts, our typical crew. We got Kaecey, everybody's favorite libertarian, and Soonie, the middle child. And we've got some special guests, as you might have seen a couple weeks ago. We've got Kevin from Liberty Revolt coming back, and Mitch from Soonie's Instagrams. He's going to come provide a counterpoint on today's show, and we've got some great topics. We're going to be talking about the GOP somehow is being blamed for defunding police. We'll talk about if we do actually live. We're going to continue the conversation of, do we live in a white supremacist country? Talk a little bit about the voting laws that I'm sure will be brought up regarding Georgia. And if we get to it, and we'll definitely at least spend some time, NC State being taken out of the College World Series by COVID positive tests. Not by COVID, but COVID positive tests. So, all right, guys, let's go ahead and get the show started. If you guys can do me a huge favor, as we've got the audience growing as we speak, hit the like, hit the heart, hit the thumbs up. Let us know where you are calling in from. And if anybody wants to know, the way we're going to start the show out is just with Kaecey, Soonie, and I. Going to give a little bit of a rundown on Kash, why he's there, why he's in DC, and clear up any confusion or questions people have. Please share this episode out there. Truth Will Set You Free starts in 30 seconds. What's going on, everybody? It's Anthony from BetheChange, and of course, you know our friends right here. We've got Kaecey and Soonie, the middle child. What's going on, everybody? Kaecey, Soonie, how are you doing this lovely evening? God, it's like I could have called it. I could have called it. She would have been muted on her first time speaking.
I did it on purpose, man. Jeez. I'm good. I can't complain. I'm actually really excited for the show. Not even gonna lie.
We don't have Conservengers this week, so we got to get it all out on this episode. We got some stuff going on, so we're no Conservengers. But so this show, we're going to have a little bit of fun and talk a little bit of truth. Kaecey, how's your week been?
It's good. Busy. Instagram is a crazy world, is what I've learned this week.
I'm having a blast. But did you guys know? You guys already know. I went viral on TikTok, like all the kids do these days.
Oh my goodness!
I'm so excited. Well, I'll tell you, it feels pretty good until your girlfriend makes fun of you for the fact that I kept checking. I'm like, babe, I'm at 50,000 views. And she's like, you're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot. But it's weird. I don't know why the video with the athlete, maybe we can continue to talk about that because I think this covers the topic. The athlete that turned her back and had this huge complaint on the anthem.
Let's talk about it, please.
Okay, we'll talk about it. What was her name again?
Gwen Berry.
Gwen Berry.
Gwen Berry.
I should know. That's what made me Uber.
You went viral on TikTok, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Gwen Berry. We'll talk about her. So I've shortened some stuff because I hate always saying I don't really like Venmo and the other things. But if you would like to support what we do, there it is. It's just on the bottom. Become a Patreon. Simple. I had a great motivational Monday this week. I really felt myself about taking self-responsibility. I was into it. Soonie, I'll send it to you. Maybe it'll be a little pep talk. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw it in your face. You wanted to. I know you did. Soonie Fun Clown, I'm assuming, is Mitch on his computer. That would be my guess. No? Who is this person?
I don't know.
Maybe it's not. By the way, Mitch is looking at it backstage. He's got no idea who Soonie Fun Clown is. So I don't know who that is. Maybe it's Black Democrat. Did Black Democrat ever
It's probably Black Democrat.
Did he ever get the link?
I never gave him.
Well, Mitch has the link because I don't know.
No.
We'll deal with that later.
Yeah. And also, here we go. Hashtag BetheChange.com /podcast. If you want to support us and can't afford anything, do you know what's free? Listening to our podcast and downloading them, even if you're not listening to them. I don't know who all these people are coming in the back. This is, I don't know what happened.
I know who that one is.
Niall? Oh, we're gonna. I feel.
Oh gosh.
I feel like we're gonna have a lot of fun on this episode. I'm
We
not
are.
sure.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, you're welcome for this entertainment that you're about to receive. You're welcome because I had to go through hell and back. I'm just saying.
So last thing I'm going to say, guys, tomorrow, I want to make sure I'll say this at the end of the episode too. Changemakers is with Jelani Givens. You guys probably remember him from our earlier episodes with Kash and et cetera. He's going to be awesome. He is actually he's doing what we tell people to do, which is get involved in local politics to create change. So we are going to talk about everything that he's got going on. Jelani, cannot wait to have you on tomorrow night. So make sure you hit the get reminder button on that as well.
One more time for the people in the back. Pull up Jaylani and the people that we have on our platform. Just one more time for the people in the back. Oh, I love you, Jaylani. We do shows together all the time. That's the homie. I can't wait to watch that episode.
He's a very dark-skinned white guy, it appears, since he's got the Make America Great hat on. All right, so let's clear everything up with the Kash, because first off, we love Kash. Everything that we do is because of the fact that we grew our following with Kash, and I still talk to Kash almost every day. I think a lot of us still do, but there is some confusion that we want to clear up because it's starting like weird fights with the people that follow our page, and it's the biggest waste of energy and time on the planet. We are doing everything we can in our power to fight for Kash. You guys have helped raise $15,000 for an attorney. Can either Soonie or Kaecey, Soonie, you're unmuted, explain what that attorney is for?
That attorney is for the appeal process that Kash is wanting to go through to appeal the sentencing that he received. I can't remember what date it was, but it was in January. Specifically because the judge did rule a little harsher because he was at the January 6th incident, but Kash is not in jail for the 6th. That appeal, that money that we raise is for the appeal.
Yep. So Kash is in, what are all these different random people? Anyways, Kash is pretty funny. At one point, they won't be able to get in anymore because it maxes out. So Kash's appeal, it's actually not even, the thing is his court-appointed attorney for Indiana cannot actually take the case the way it needs to be filed. There's a special filing that can only be done privately, we have found out recently. And again, this is all based off appealing the sentence of the case from 10 years ago. The reason why he is in a DC jail is because, like me, he went to Washington, D.C. Unlike me, he went a little bit further than I did. Now, his original sentence did have, we do believe, allegedly, based on what the judge said, probably was a little harsher than it should have been. There was issues with the fact that his court-appointed attorney was supposed to have filed proper paperwork for him to leave the state. That was not done. We don't know why. We don't know if there's a whole bunch of what ifs on that. But the reason he is in D.C. is because there's nothing that can be done to let him out of D.C. and just let him out of jail. He is in jail serving a sentence based on something that happened 10 years ago and was sentenced in January, February, whenever that was. So to be clear, he is not being held he's being held with DC protesters, but not being held against his will because of what he did on the 6th. That's just part of a much bigger story. So we want to be as clear as humanly possible. So does that make sense? Facts.
I hope so. So now people can stop the ridiculous fighting in the comments. And I hope everybody has a very good understanding now so that we don't have to bring this conversation up again. Truly. Because it's really hard when people say, what's going on with Kash? And you say it every single day as if we don't give updates almost every single day. So now that people are here and you heard what we're doing, you heard the process, you heard what we're doing with the funds, let's move forward.
Let's do it. And for everybody, Kaecey, do you have anything to add or are we good?
You're good.
All right, do us a favor. We have 40 reactions, yet we've got almost 150 viewers. If everybody right now could algorithmically do us a favor, hit the like, hit the hearts, hit the care button on the count of 3, that'll completely change the algorithm, or even hit share if you're feeling bold enough to do it. Go ahead and do that in 3, 2, 1. Share politics, share information, etc. Thank you guys. All right. I have no idea who all the people are backstage. I know Mitch is. If you guys want to actually be a part of the conversation, you are going to have to show your picture so I can see who you are. I've got Fernie, Sanders, Soonie, Fun Clown, and Niall, which are all welcome to join the party. But for now, let's bring on the people we planned on bringing on because we want to have a great conversation. Let's just start it off with introducing them and then bring it up to Gwen Berry. Kevin, I'm going to have you come on first, and then I'm going to bring in Mitch.
Well,
Kevin,
what the hell am I getting myself into tonight? Thanks again for having me. Liberty Revolt Media. I got my part 2 of my White House Takes Aim, talking about the new national security countering of domestic terrorism, or whatever they want to call it. We hate our political opposition. We want to take them down bill or strategy. But yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm a little bit scared at the moment. So let's get this.
Don't be scared.
Never. Nothing scares me.
Right. I make you back. All right, Mitch, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. Come on. There's all this private chat comments from these people we don't know. All right, Mitch, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
Hi, guys. I appreciate the invite. I appreciate the opening. You guys sound like you got a lot of good stuff going on. So wanted to come in and kind of give my perspective and thoughts on some of the topics that you guys are discussing.
Excellent. And to be super clear, everybody sees that I'm muting Mitch probably right now. I am not muting him because I don't like him. I'm muting him because he's using a phone. We got a little bit of feedback. We're going to keep it as clear as possible. If I see him talking loud in the bottom of the page, I promise you I will make sure to unmute so he can talk. It's just whenever one of us talks, there's a little bit of feedback. So I'm going to increase the size of my screen to make this work better. Mitch, I also want to give you credit. So people are saying volume. It's going to have to work, Tracy, and we'll just make sure he speaks up a little bit when he talks. I'm going to go ahead and raise this mic up a little bit more. Can I edit your mic settings out because you're muted? Hold on one sec. Let's see if this is any better. All right, we'll go ahead and do that. All right, so Mitch, I want to thank you for coming on. You and I had Mitch is gone.
And he's gone.
Oops.
No, hopefully he'll come back.
All right, that's only me you do it to.
Yeah, I know. I didn't do that to him. That one I did not do. All right, so let's see. He's back again. Let's see if we can get him. Come on, Mitch. There we go.
There he is.
All right, there you go. Mitch, you there?
I'm here.
All right. You're good. All right,
Okay.
so you sound better too. So I want to give you credit. You and I had a discussion on Soonie's IG, and I know I took over talking, and I hate when I do that. But you and I were having a pretty good conversation, and I truly enjoyed talking to you. Black Democrat, not so much. There was not a single valid thing that came out of his mouth. You were very well educated on some of the topics, and enough to where it was an interesting conversation. So I thank you for that, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you. So I want to start out with this crew. And I want to start out with Mitch. I'm going to have you lead in because I want to talk about Gwen Berry a little bit. Do you know who Gwen is?
Yes.
What is your
Black
opinion
yeah.
on that? Yep. What's your opinion on that?
Well, if you follow Barry for a while, she's been talking about protesting for a while, and so that's always been her position. And so even doing, I think is it Alton Sterling? I think that's when she first started talking about being an activist around, protesting, getting involved. So this has been around for a long period of time. I'm not sure why it's such a surprise. I think people feel like it's so polarizing because she did it on that stage. But the real question is, what's the right way to protest? I mean, this is always a common question. If we look at Colin Kaepernick, we look at even Martin Luther King when he protested, he was even shunned. He was disliked during his time. He's appreciated and revered today, but no one liked his methods, even though he's held in high regard for his protesting methods today. You look at Malcolm X, you look at BLM. There's not a form of protest that's ever acceptable. So I think the real question is how do we stop moving the goalposts when people want to go out and exercise their freedom to be active and to raise awareness around certain issues?
So I'll go ahead and give my reason why I disagree with it. And it's the exact thing I said differently, but at the same time as Colin Kaepernick. I believe as though Colin Kaepernick is a professional athlete. had the right to say what he wanted to. I think it was from a place of complete and utter bullshit. I think the fact that he had socks with pigs and police the month before, the fact he said he never voted, the fact that he didn't give a dime to any inner city charities until after he was called out, well after the fact. All these different flaws in the system were why I didn't like Kaepernick, and I thought that it didn't bring people together. With that said, at that exact same time, I said, now this is a professional athlete, and I'm okay with it, because we do have freedom of speech in this country. Where I draw the line is if it's an Olympic athlete, and this was a couple years ago, and I didn't know who this athlete was because she's a track athlete that didn't even come in first place in the United States of America, but enough to qualify. So that's mediocre, and I really don't care at this point. But when you look at the overall thought process of being an Olympian, your point is to represent your country. And if you don't believe in your country, it's a very weird place to be competing. So you just essentially want to be on a global stage. Here's the deal. You can go compete and go for another country. And Mitch, I'll go back to you, and then I'm going to go to the rest of our guests. But at the same time, again, it's ironic to me that she has got the freedoms to protest and still be a track athlete in a country that she believes are so ridiculously oppressive. Go ahead, Mitch.
Right. So again, you got to unpack that. So not everybody believes that, the country represents their freedoms. When you're on that stage, I mean, doing this, doing the wars that our ancestors have fought, not all the soldiers were free. They were enslaved, and they was promised freedom when they came back from the war, and they were never given freedom. And then if you listen to her message again, she started being active around Alton Sterling, if I'm not mistaken. So she's been really, really active for a long period of time. And so I know you want to discount that she came in third place, whatever case may be, but she still earned the right to be on that stage.
She did, and she chose to no longer be on the stage. She literally turned her back on the stage. And you bring up Alton Sterling. Do you believe Alton Sterling was a justified police killing, or do you think this was the typical narrative?
So before we go to Alton, let's circle back to Colin Kaepernick before I forget my thought. So in regards to Colin Kaepernick, again, you use slight little discounts, such as, he gave money after the fact. He gave $1 million of his own money when he lost his job. Colin, I don't know why people lose the messaging in some of these activism, because again, you haven't given me a solution on how you protest. Now, do I agree with his socks? No. He also wore a shirt. I forgot. I don't know if the shirt was it Hitler, I believe, which I thought was
Che Guevara.
Che Guevara, yeah.
Right. I didn't agree with that. So people are going to make mistakes. Protests don't always look pretty and perfect. But the bigger message is, why you guys, not you guys, but why Republicans, why people on the opposite end always focus on the counter narrative than the actual narrative? Like, when do we actually address the problem that these people are promoting or trying to bring awareness to? Because the message always gets lost into all of this. Again, I gave you Colin Kaepernick, I gave you Barry, I gave you Martin Luther King, I gave you BLM. Tell me what example of a protest looks right to you that was effective.
Well, when it's misconstrued, they're talking so much. He talks so much about police brutality when it's not the number one. It's not even in the top 10 actual problems plaguing the Black community. He had no idea about the statistics. He started something that caused more division, and I think actually was something that stoked the fires that led us to the BLM riots. You brought up BLM. I don't think there's a single human being with rational thought right now that thinks that BLM was an actual decent organization. Great thought process. Black lives do matter, but BLM is a complete failed organization, 100%. Before I have Mitch go back, I'm going to have, who wants to go next? Kevin, Soonie. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? I do have to agree with her, because as a Sicilian, it disgusts me. It makes me feel sick every time I see the Italian national anthem being played, knowing what those mainlanders did to my Sicilian ancestors. Like, it makes me sick, because like they oppressed my ancestors. People, I don't know them. I have no idea who these people are, but mind you, they oppressed my ancestors. That's what this argument is. That's what it comes down to. The grievances she's complaining about, that she's standing up against, are grievances of the ancestor. How can you possibly justify holding the sins of someone that I never possibly even knew? Speaking like, I am Sicilian, so my family didn't come over here till the 1930s. even though I still have to apologize for my whiteness. I get it. The problem we run into is that that when it comes down to making people live up for and be the justice that should have been sought generations before, that's not okay. It is never okay to hold crimes against people that their ancestors committed, because I am not my father, I am not my grandfather, right? I'm not any of these people. I am myself. The sins that are committed by my father are not my own. And we seem to live in this society where it's like, well, my ancestors were not justifiably reimbursed. They were not given a justifiable amount of justice and retribution for the sin of slavery. And that may be true. And that is probably true. And I would personally say it is. But it does not change the fact that, when you're complaining in today's America, where if we just look at the statistics, let's talk about Chicago. In Chicago in 2016, there were about 3,500 shootings, and about 23 of them were police involved. Right. And you're trying to tell me that this is the biggest problem facing these communities. And it comes down to what she's protesting against is non-existent. And what it comes down to is she's standing for a position that requires saying, you people are bad for what you did to my people. And by my people, I mean people that lived 150 years ago. And by you people, I mean people that lived 150 years ago. So that's what the problem comes down to. And personally, I could get even farther into this, but I'm just going to leave it at that. You cannot hold the sins of the father against the child. That just can't happen.
Excellent. I'm busy having conversation with Fernie and Soonie Fun Clown in the back. These are hilarious. I don't know how they got the actual thing. I'm assuming Mitch shared it on accident, thinking that he was sharing the actual live, but there's a bunch of fun random people that are in backstage that are. If they stick around till the end, once we have a productive show, I'm going to go ahead and bring them on and see what kind of shit show they end up ensuing. So stick around and back, and we'll see. Mitch, I'm going to go ahead and let you talk again because I know you wanted to say something in regards to what I said and what Kevin said.
Sure. So as it relates to you, can you hear me? You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So as it relates to you, I haven't heard a solution on how you protest, right? And so. So I would like to hear more feedback specifically. Give me something tangible I can walk away with, right? For me in the audience, how do you protest? What does that look like?
100%.
Because it doesn't sound like no form of protest is acceptable. And secondly, as it relates to the gentleman's argument, it's not about sins. It's not about holding people today for sins of the past. It's about the fact that she feels so strongly about her belief about raising an issue and raising awareness to something she believes in. That's the country we believe in, right? We believe in freedom of speech. We believe in exercising that. So if she feels like that her community is still dealing with some oppression, systemic issues, she has the right to do that. Whether she came in first place or third place, she's in the Olympics. Again, she could have came in first place and she still would have been discredited. LeBron James still gets discredited. It doesn't matter. The goalposts will always be moved. That's why it's very hard to find how do you go about protesting, because the goalposts will forever be moved. I would like to hear your feedback on that, guys.
Absolutely. So the point of protest is brief. It's to create awareness. So if people don't understand that there is some issues with policing in this country, and there is some issues with racial inequality, mostly about our history. Where does he keep going? I don't understand. So if people don't understand, hopefully he comes back. If people don't understand why there is the issues that we have, there's no point in protesting. All protesting is going to do is continue to separate people in this instance. So the proper way to protest, Mitch, I kind of stalled so you can get back. The proper way to protest is to actually do something and to take action. There really isn't anything in this day and age. There isn't anything in this day and age that we don't know about. I said the last thing, and this is coming from somebody that protested on the 6th, so I'm going to explain to you what I did that day. When I was there on the 6th, I was part of a group of people that were intended to be peaceful. Unfortunately, there was a handful that got out of hand, which I condemn. Now, when it comes to protesting, what BLM did when they're walking up the street, completely fine. However, they had a completely misdirected narrative. Things like election integrity, still to this day, are not fully proven. Still to this day, we're waiting stuff. And ultimately, we wanted an investigation. We didn't say that it was completely fraudulent or whatever it was. We said we wanted an investigation, and we were there to also fight back against the speaking point that our country was full of all these falsities and that the First Amendment rights were being taken away. So now Colin Kaepernick's proper thing to do was to have donated money first, speak on injustices. Also, he changed his stance on sitting for the anthem to kneeling because he never asked anybody, and then he changed because of the backlash. The proper way to protest is to actually take action 9 times out of 10. The last time we didn't know something about racial inequality in this country was the Flint water crisis. Now, that would have been something to protest against. But all of this police brutality, and I'm going to say Alton Sterling, and then I want to go to Soonie. Alton Sterling was reaching for a firearm in his pocket while he was fighting with police officers on the ground. He did not deserve to die. It's unfortunate. But fact is, when you reach for a gun, when a police are trying to arrest you, it's going to be a possible byproduct of your stupid actions. Soonie, go ahead, then we'll go back to Mitch. Mute.
He has the proper way to protest. And I actually posted, I think, a very effective way to protest, and I used Jesse Owens. If you could pull the picture up. In the midst, yeah, it's right there. In the midst of ignorant people, in the midst of Nazis doing the Nazi salute, Germany, all that stuff, he stood there, saluted the flag, and did what he had to do. Nobody here, I don't believe that she can't protest. She has every right to protest whatever she wants to protest. What makes it distasteful is when you're representing a country and then you just turn your back on the national anthem, whether it means something to all of you here, is not the point. It's a representation of our country. The flag is a representation of our country. You are representing our country. She could have went about it in a better way. And that's the only argument I have, because it's no more or less with me. I don't care if she's black. If this woman was white and she did the exact same thing, I would be saying, don't disrespect the country that you're representing, period. There were plenty of people that protested in the most respectful way possible to get their point across. You don't want to appear like, if we're going to talk about white supremacy and we're going to talk about how bad some white folks are in this country, you don't want to act like them. You don't want to show ignorance. You don't even want to be compared to them. So the best way to do that is carry yourself with class and show yourself better. And putting a shirt over your head, turning your back, getting off the platform. Nah, bro. She didn't, in no way, shape, or form was that respectful to anybody. And I have this is important to me because I have my husband is fighting for this country. So to see anybody disrespected because of what's happening in the country, what you may or may not believe is happening in the country is just absurd to me. There are better ways to go about things. Carry yourself with class. That's all I'm trying to say.
Mitch, I'm going to let you talk. I want to, Niall, I can see you in the back stage again. I wanted to have you on an episode where we've got younger group audience, and I think that was the mistake in this. Wave your hand if you have an actual response to exactly what we're talking about right now, or do you want to wait for something later in the show? Okay, all right. I'll bring you up after Mitch. Go ahead. I'm going to keep you muted when you bring you up, and then I'll have you talk. Mitch, I know you wanted to reply. Go ahead.
So she brings up Jesse Owens, right? So now look at the context of Jesse Owens. What came out of Jesse Owens' protest? See, protest is acceptable when it doesn't make people uncomfortable. See, his protest was so silent and was so much on the terms of everybody else and not on his terms. He had to protest and adjust to how you guys want him to protest. And that's why you accept that. There was no huge impact.
What is the matter with he needs to stop getting phone calls. It's driving me nuts.
Can I just respond really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
He literally asked me for a solution. How could she have protested better to where you guys wouldn't say anything?
Right.
And I literally presented a solution, which is the exact way Jesse Owens protested. I don't care what he was protesting for, what circumstances he was facing. The fact that he had that much respect in the face of being treated like total garbage speaks volumes of his character. That is all I'm saying. You asked for a solution, and I totally just gave you one.
And I also did slam Megan Rapinoe that did the same thing, which doesn't matter the race. I think when you represent a country, it changes things. Does she have the right to do it? Yes. I also have the First Amendment right to tell that person that I ridiculously disagree with it. Mitch, finish your statement, then I'll go to Niall.
I keep getting cut off. I'm sorry. Not sure why I'm getting cut off so much. So I think I heard Soonie says.
What's that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think Soonie says she gave an example of what protests look like, and she also said, listen to this. She says, I don't care what he was protesting about. That's the problem. She doesn't even know what the protest was even about. See, it's just all about trying to counter the narrative. It's not really trying to be progressive.
Okay. I don't know
he
what
asked for a solution. I gave a solution, and then my solution is not good enough because I'm saying, like, regardless of what he was protesting for, whether it was solid, whether it was flimsy, we all know what he was protesting for, and it's important. The bigger picture is he did it with class and respect.
All right, yeah. This is going to be my last thing with Mitch. Mitch, so this is why we asked you to be on 20 minutes early to keep sound checking, and you came on 3 minutes after we start, or 3 minutes after we were supposed to start. If I don't know why you're cutting out, I don't know if it's because you're getting phone calls or whatever it might be, but if not, I would love to have you back at another time. We're going to keep you up just for now. If it cuts out again, I'm just going to stick with Niall.
Does he have a computer? If you have a computer, it might work better if you come on via your computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's have you do that. And then Niall, go ahead. I'm going to go and unmute you. Go for it. Oh,
yeah. So I'm just checking. I didn't do a sound check. So is my voice okay? Everything sounds decent?
Yeah, keep it close to your mouth and you're good to go.
Awesome.
Introduce yourself for me if you could.
Yeah, so no problem. I am Niall. I'm 17 years old. Right now I'm studying politics, sociology, and philosophy. And I'm from England. But I do take a massive interest because it's not only part of my education, but generally, since the 2016 election, been very interested in American politics. You know, I've gone all off about the spectrum. I used to be a Trump supporter, slowly went away. To be honest, I went a lot of cringe. I've been a communist. That isn't very good. But, you know, I am settling a lot more in the middle now, a lot more of a middle take. And I was just talking, so that's me. But Soonie, so sorry I didn't hear, but you said that you don't mind protesting in the way that she was doing it, but it had to be, you said, the way that someone else did it. Sorry, I didn't quite catch the bit. So what was the way that protesting for you is better? What way for you is more respectable?
If you're going to protest. But don't be, in my opinion, what she did was extremely childish. You put a shirt over your head. You turn your back. You don't pay attention to what's going on. There are two other American girls standing on the podium respecting, like, this is the country I'm representing. Let me go ahead and pay attention to what's going on, whether I agree with it or not. Homegirl could have stood on that podium and did this, and I would have had nothing to say about it. Absolutely nothing. I would have been like, you know what? At least you stood there and you had enough class to acknowledge the country you're representing. But that would be like if you're talking to me, right? And you're making your points and you're saying A, B, C, D, F, G, and I do this. You're not going to feel respected, are you? You're going to feel like I don't give a crap about what you're saying.
And Niall, I'm going to add to it what Soonie just said. A part of it also is her choice to protest was one thing. Her then choice to go to the media afterwards and cry foul. If that's what she wanted, because she wanted to do it on a global stage, she got the global stage that she wanted. Why is she complaining? Why is it literally she got exactly what she wanted, then she said it was a setup. So on top of the fact that I do not respect those that are representing the country choosing to desecrate the same country that they're representing, but on top of it, she got what she wanted and then cried victim again.
And I'd like to add in here, like, at the end of the day, no matter what protest you're doing, there is always going to be negative feedback. That's why it's a protest. No matter what you do, there's going to be the feedback. It's all about weighing that risk reward. Is what I am protesting for and how I am protesting going to have the response that I want? It doesn't have the response now because we're aware of this. What is she bringing awareness to? Something we are all aware of. If we're all aware of it, this is completely unnecessary. It takes it too far because it's like we are aware of the problem because we live in in America, a country where we can have these discussions, where these problems can be brought up, where we can work as a society to make ourselves better. Hence why it comes down to these protests keep occurring because they're running out of actual issues to protest about. The left is running out of actual problems. We have gotten to a point in America where we are solving so many of our cultural and societal issues that we are having to make stuff up. Like people protesting like the American flag. Like the fact that you can protest the American flag on the fucking podium should tell you just how amazing the country you're living in truly freaking is. Because there's a lot of countries she could have represented and done the same thing and actually been in danger for it. She's in no danger here. There's no bravery required to do this. She's going to be supported by every single major entertainment outlet, every single major news outlet. Everything is going to be in support of her against people who happen to be disrespected by it. There's no bravery required here. In fact, we all expected it, and that's the problem. It's disappointing. We all knew this was probably going to happen at some point, that someone was going to bring up this exact protest and do this exact kind of thing, because once again, people from my generation have no freaking idea just how rough life can possibly fucking be. We have had it so easy that we are just nitpicking things to protest about, despite the fact that we have grown up in the freest, most prosperous generation in human existence. Never before have humans had life as good as we have had it. And the thing is that humans want shit to complain about, and people are going to find shit to complain about. And so her protest brought no awareness to an issue none of us knew about. It wasn't the same as Jesse Owens standing before Hitler in Berlin on the cusp of one of the greatest genocides in human history, right? No, this was on the podium at a training facility in America, in the freest land in the world, where you know you're not going to get anything negative in response for it. So yeah, her protest was childish, it was unnecessary, and it was stupid.
Niall, go ahead and reply. Mitch, I'm bringing you up, and then we'll test you out once Niall goes in and gives his reply.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So I had to write down a few things. So one thing, I didn't necessarily read. So you said, was it something she said? She said she was being foul afterwards. I don't know what she said. So could you tell me exactly?
Yeah, she said that it was a setup because they only played the anthem once a day, and during the U.S. Olympic trials, and it's usually at a set time. So essentially, they might have been doing this just to push the envelope with her. I actually don't know. That's alleged either way. Even if they were, you're at an U.S. Olympic event. So she's saying it was a setup for her to be forced to stand for the anthem when she was, receiving her third place award, etc. So that's what she was crying foul, and that's why she made the news. It would have made the news one way, but then she actually got to speak on her own behalf as a press conference, essentially, over and over to speak on they're pushing me to be even more of an activist.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, the way she's obviously phrasing it, I believe there's much better ways to do it. In terms of Kevin, so I think I wrote down two things for Kevin. It was the left ran out of things to complain about. I mean, it depends what you mean by the left, right? Because I consider myself left, but I mean,
You're right.
Compared to a lot of leftists, oh my god, I hate leftists so much. I can't. The communists, the people who defend the Soviet Union, the revolutionaries, I hate them just as much as you do, probably. But when you mean the left, I mean the problem is
I don't mean you.
Broad term. Yeah. So the left has run out of things to complain about. I don't think we have. I believe there are certain leftists, and here's the thing: what's the saying where it's like the loudest person is always going to be more recognized, right? Even if they don't hold the general consensus. The left isn't running out of things to complain about. There are just certain people within the left movement who are so loud about their dumb opinions that it makes it seem like this is what the left actually believe, right? When I would completely disagree. I think the left hasn't run out of things to complain about. I believe our complaints are valid. Most of them, for example, I'd think workers being worker alienation within the workplace is a big one. One of them is, climate change. One of them is, stuff like nationalism that's on the rise, especially since COVID epidemic. I mean, you can say I know some of you would probably say, "Oh, I believe in nationalism," or I'm against globalism and stuff like that. I mean, that's perfectly fine, but I mean, I don't think we run out of things to complain about that are valid. I just believe there is a small amount of like radical leftists that are speaking for the rest of us, and you're getting caught up in that thing. So in terms
I get it.
yeah. So in terms of also America is the freest, I just have to disagree. I believe America is a great country, one of the best countries in the world by far, no
Aren't
doubt
many
in my
free
mind.
countries.
Absolutely, one of the best countries in the world. But that's and I will even go so far as to say America is so free that there are people who have such entitlement issues where they believe their problems are huge when in fact 6 billion 5 billion people live in what we would consider absolute poverty. So I mean, there's definitely some entitled people out there,
Yes.
but America, I don't think they're the freest. And it depends what you mean by free, right? Because I mean, there's positive freedoms and there's also negative freedoms,
Yes.
as well as it depends what you mean. Do you mean economic freedom or social freedom?
Both.
Ooh, Niall,
I would have to disagree on both of them. I would agree America's definitely up there, but I would say, I mean, I'm biased. I would say England's a little bit more free, but
No,
I'm a
you have a
patriot.
nanny state,
So-
a complete and utter nanny state. I would go to jail for disagreeing with
Yeah,
COVID.
I get
Yeah,
it. Now
no,
I want to go. If you don't mind, I'm going to go over to Mitch real quick. Said I think his computer's up and working. I think it'd be on England. The one thing I will take from that conversation is I believe first off, you guys did a great job protesting against lockdowns. Now that's a hell of a protest. People are saying, legit, I'm going to get out of my house and I'm going to protest these lockdowns that are killing my business. At the same token, I believe as though most of the places there are still wearing masks and are still partially locked down. So there's a difference. Mitch, go ahead, my friend. I'm sorry. Let's do a mic check. Let me hear you.
Can you guys hear me?
Way better. I should have had you do a computer in the beginning. There we go. All right.
So I came in on Kevin's comment. And so Kevin says we're in the freest country, right? Listen to the psychology behind that statement. We're in the freest. That means we're not actually free. We're just freer than most countries, right? So therefore, we obviously have some issues to work on.
100%.
So that's why you see people like, Gwen Berry and Jesse Owens and Colin Kaepernick. These people are standing up for these issues and bringing awareness to it. I don't understand why it's so much attack on the counter narrative than it is on the actual narrative. Now, Anthony, you say, hey, police brutality is a small issue. Why even address it? That's your argument. Is that correct?
I think it is a minuscule issue in the grand scheme of things, and for it to be deemed as a strictly racist thing, I think is an almost non-existent narrative. And I'll say almost. I think there is some issues, but I think it is an almost non-existent narrative.
It's not almost non-existent because if you look in the past 15 years, Black, white, Hispanics, Asians, green, yellow, Black humans were killed by cops. At least 1,000 people are killed every year by cops, right?
Yeah.
So it's not race.
And
there's nothing racial about it.
Right, but it's a political thing that you guys make racial. So you only make it seem that it's only a Black issue because when you look at Daniel Shaver, right? Who came out to protest with Daniel Shaver? It was BLM.
No. It was one faction of BLM. Just to be clear, it was one small group of BLM.
There's no BLM out for Duncan Lemp. There's no BLM out for Kelly Taylor.
Right, but there's definitely nobody on the right for those people, right? So again, you want to hold BLM to such a high regard, right? But yet you don't see Republicans taking issues on this. You guys take the back seat. And so when you look at Jonathan Price was a gentleman. He was a Black conservative. I'm sure you guys don't know who Jonathan Price is.
Yeah,
Black,
we do.
Who says that?
Soonie,
I
go
know who
ahead.
Jonathan Price is. That story was all over the place.
I educated Soonie on Jonathan Price, actually. But
no, you didn't. I knew who he was before then, but okay.
Okay. So Jonathan Price was, and kudos to you, Soonie. Obviously, Anthony and possibly Kevin didn't know who Jonathan Price is. Do your Googles, Kevin. I appreciate that. So Jonathan Price was a gentleman who actually came out. He condemned George Floyd. He condemned BLM. He was a respected police comply first gentleman, right?
I know exactly who he is.
He supported Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum.
Oh, I remember. No. I
We
did a
talked
whole.
about it.
Did a whole.
Yes.
I was the
We
one
talked
that did
about
the
it.
story because it was based close to my
Yeah.
house. I didn't remember his name, but I did a whole story about Jonathan Price. 100% know who Jonathan Price is.
Oh,
I
you
talked
know,
about him with my Turning Point chapter.
I
And
appreciate
we
it.
thought the cop was full of
I'm
shit.
glad, I'm glad you guys know who he is now. Now we all on board,
Not
right?
now. Not now.
Okay.
Go
Okay.
ahead. I didn't recognize the name. There's only so many
Yeah.
names we can
Wait a second.
remember. Yeah,
So-
and of course that name did not last very long in the media because it didn't fit a narrative properly. But go ahead.
It did fit the narrative because BLM was there protesting, right? So again, you see examples where you guys only cherry pick the bad parts. You don't want to paint all cops being bad, but you want to paint all BLM bad. There
I
are good
think that's
parts
good.
in there. There are good parts and there's bad parts into everything. Why focus on the counter narrative so much when again I say black and white? Police brutality is just a people's issue. It's not just a black person issue. Whites, you look at Tony Temple. You guys talk about Tony Temple, but you talk about it in the wrong spirit. Y'all bring up Tony Temple to say, you know what? Look at Tony Temple was killed. Why are you making such a big issue about George Floyd? That shouldn't be.
Hey,
the
Mitch,
spirit.
can I ask you a question?
Can I
Mitch.
finish this piece? Can I finish this piece really quick?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So the spirit shouldn't be to justify somebody dying. The spirit should be nobody should have to die unjustly.
Yes.
Go ahead, Anthony.
I agree. So my question becomes: so Jonathan Price was killed while he was being a do-gooder. He's killed by police, and apparently BLM protested for 1 day, maybe 2 days. What did that protest accomplish?
The cop was immediately arrested.
Before the protest.
Yeah.
He wasn't arrested.
Hey,
No, incorrect. I
Definitely
was
was.
the one that he was immediately put on administrative leave, and he was arrested within 24 hours.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask, what did the protest do?
The protest, the BLM protest, brought awareness, and that's why you have an arrest within 24 hours.
I just told you that's incorrect.
It's
So
not-
since
Anthony,
since
you
that is
didn't know who Jonathan Price was. I made
I
you
just
aware who Jonathan
Mitch,
Price is.
Mitch, I'm allowed to have a conversation. I love having the conversation with you. I didn't recognize the name until I looked at the face. I remembered the face. And why do I not remember Jonathan Price's name? Because it's not on one single fucking shirt, one single fucking billboard, one single fucking any paperboard
Yeah.
saying say his name.
You know
So
why?
I'm going to tell you right now, I know who Jonathan Price is.
You know
Watch
why?
yourself.
You know why, Anthony?
Go ahead.
What is the mantra that BLM shout every time? No justice, no peace. Jonathan Price cop was arrested. It took 3 days or so days for BLM to go out and get an arrest and a charge for Derek Chauvin. That's why you see people out there protesting. It's just not saying stop the killing. It's also to hold cops accountable. That's why you see Jonathan Price case go so smoothly.
got-
He got
got-
shot.
So the protests in Minnesota you think are justified? The ones that burnt down buildings just so that they could get an arrest done. They burnt down black-owned businesses, burnt down white-owned businesses, burnt down a city, burnt down federal buildings. But that's
I think
what,
you
if
guys
that's
are
what it
agreeing.
takes-
Hold on. I think you guys are agreeing. You guys, I don't think you guys can see through it. I think you guys are actually agreeing on the issue. Mitch, you're saying everybody is killed. We should be protesting everyone, right?
Exactly.
And Anthony,
And
you're
then my-
saying you guys are
But
saying
my
the same
question
thing.
is, what is protesting doing to the point what we're doing? What is you just said that they created an arrest and then you realized that was wrong and you changed it to Derek Chauvin.
No, I did not realize it wrong. You didn't know who Jonathan Price is. And
If
now
you
all of a
say it
sudden
one
you
more
have to know
time, I'm going to
other
get
people.
really frustrated, Mitch. I know if you want me to go back to when I broke that story, I can do that for you. I didn't recognize a name, and I explained why I didn't recognize a name. You're skirting on thin ice because you're actually changing the subject and why, because I didn't remember a very specific name. I know who he is. I know the case. It took place very close to my house. So go ahead.
In which city, Anthony?
It was just outside of Dallas.
I know. What's the name of the city, Anthony?
You're fucking with me right now, right?
I'm not. Tell me which city.
I want to say it started with an M. If this is really the nitpicking that you want to do,
No,
you're literally proving
it's actually in Gulf City, Texas.
Gulf City? Was that
Yeah.
outside of Houston?
It's about 3 to 4 hours. It could be closer to Dallas, but I remember the city being Gulf City, Texas. Somebody correct me if I'm
Can
wrong.
I ask a dumb question? Why the fuck does that matter?
I want to see how much details you know, because you know exactly the moment BLM show up,
Wolf
and
City.
you know exactly when the cop got arrested.
Gulf City.
And you're trying to make a disconnection between the two. That's why I'm asking the details.
So I'm going to ask again, because the one thing that you're blatantly wrong on, Mitch, is the fact that you're not answering me. What was the purpose of the protest for Jonathan Price if the police officer had already been arrested? At that point, they were
He was
just
not already
protesting.
arrested. He was not already arrested. That's where we disagree. I'm telling you, BLM
Find it.
BLM was on the scene initially. The guy was unjustly shot. Why? Just like Kevin said, we kind of agree. Why you exert so much energy?
I think protesting is stupid 99% of the time.
Why do you exert so much energy in trying to discredit BLM? We got justice for a young man that was
I don't need to discredit BLM. They do it themselves.
We should be on the same page with that. Now, when I asked you earlier about what's the proper way to protest, the first example you brought me to was the January 6th riots.
Because it was creating awareness. I said there should have been an actual awareness created for Flint water crisis. And honestly, if BLM did anything that actually made sense and had a proper organization, and they wanted to walk up the street for George Floyd, I was for it. I was 100% for it. But when they started burning down buildings the next 12 hours later, that's when they lost me. Just the same way as the Capitol protest was a failure once they started to do damage, which was, by the way, a fraction of all BLM protests. Soonie, sorry, I keep cutting the chance for you to speak. Whenever you come back, I know that it's time for you to have the floor. But honestly, protests, if they actually serve a purpose and actually create change, and the Jonathan Price thing, I would love for you to prove to me that BLM was the reason why an officer was arrested. Please show me that. I'm gung-ho for that.
Do you discount that they added awareness and pressure for Derek Chauvin to be charged and arrested?
Did they add pressure? They added pressure to make sure he got convicted 100%. Did they do it the right way? Absolutely not. You had the leader of the free world actually commenting, well, it better happen this way. It's essentially taking demands from a terrorist organization, which is what BLM has become. Soonie, go ahead.
What about Tony Temple? Do you think on Daniel Shaver, do you think BLM protesting for them, do you think it was justified?
How long did they protest for? One day? Like, I just said, I don't think protests do shit unless they are done correctly.
I went through this exercise to see if you're more focused on BLM or actually trying to save lives. See,
I'm more interested in actually taking action. Like, as Mitch, you and I talked about, Mitch, listen for a second. You and I talked about the issues are education. The issues are actually getting families back together in the inner city, looking at old previous issues of systemic racism and making sure we invest in inner city communities and the economy. But actually protesting one life that's killed by a police officer in a touchy situation, I think is absolute waste of energy and time. Mitch, I'm going to let Soonie talk.
Let me just make this one point. That's very disingenuous, number one. And so for you to say just one life, I just gave you statistics that 1,000 people are dying. Not all of them are unjustified killings, but again, you have such a low ratio of cops being convicted. So much is skewed towards the police. That's why cops can go and murder people and walk away.
If somebody's got a gun or a knife in their hand, they're typically not convicted because the person had a knife or a gun in their hand.
We're only arguing if they have a gun and knife in hand. Tony Temple didn't. Daniel Shaver didn't. But yet you can't see the fight for those guys. You only worry about discrediting BLM. I'll
talk about it. I'll say that that's an unfortunate instance, and it's a byproduct of a shitty system that we have. But it's also there's less than, including white people, there's less than 40 or 50 people that are unarmed that die a year, and we don't even know how many are fighting back to the police. So you're looking at the outliers. The outliers are unfortunate and sad. Stop talking, Mitch. Soonie, go ahead.
I don't know. I was hoping this would be a conversation and not like really circular arguments. I'm going to be honest. It seems like you just want to come on here to discredit us. I don't think anybody whose life was lost due to police interaction doesn't matter. I think actually getting the information of what happened in the case and getting context and things absolutely matters, just like you would have to do in any court hearing. When somebody goes on trial for murder, the lawyer has to prove either he murdered him or he didn't. If you're going to have a defense attorney, they have to prove, well, what happened? Well, why'd you do this? So as a public, I feel like we should be doing the exact same things. Let's get the entire story. Why did this happen? It's unfortunate when anybody dies. It's unfortunate that George Floyd died. It's unfortunate that Breonna Taylor died. It's unfortunate that Rashard Brooks died. All those people shouldn't have died, but we still have to hold them accountable for why they are where they are. I would be held accountable to the fullest extent if I decided to fight an officer. Nobody would come out and protest for me if they found out I actually fought and pulled a gun and did all these things that I probably shouldn't be doing, you guys wouldn't be out protesting for me because I would clearly be wrong. Just like when we hear of instances of white people getting jacked up by cops. If you're wrong, you're wrong, no matter what color you are. I don't know. I'm kind of with Russo on this. BLM has been protesting for over a year. Let me not even say that. They've been protesting since Trayvon Martin. What has changed in America due to their protesting? For anybody's circumstance, they collected over $100 million. Where is the Black community seeing any of those funds? They didn't protest for David Dorn. They didn't protest for Patrick. I can't remember his last name. 2 Black men died in those riots. I don't hear BLM talking about any of those cases. David Dorn was protecting a friend's business. He's a retired police officer, Black man. This is all I'm saying, is the reaction is always geared towards one narrative. There's only a reaction if the person was killed by a white cop. And I don't think that's fair. If we're going to talk about all these cases, then we should focus on them all. We shouldn't just highlight, which is what a lot of Black people are doing in this country. We got a target painted on our backs. And Gwen Berry didn't protest for the white people that died. She protested for Black folks in their treatment in this country. And you just said we should care about all of them. So if we should care about all of them, then why are we not protesting for all of them? Why don't these white faces get plastered across the screen day in and day out, constantly showing the way they died? Why? We saw, what's his name? Everything is fleeing from me right now. We saw Daniel Schaefer for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And then that story completely disappeared. Nobody, till this day, no cops have been charged, and BLM is not still out protesting for them. Why?
And you've also, there's one last week. You've got Johnny Hurley, who was literally doing the same thing that Jonathan Price did, and he actually stopped a gunman. By the way, the gunman killed a police officer at point blank range and assassinated him in Colorado. And when the police showed up, they saw a man with a gun, and Hurley was killed. And you know what his family did? They gave him tribute. They said it was an unfortunate circumstance, and they understood, unfortunately, as sad as it was, that in the blink of an eye, anything like this can happen. And the cop showed up, and he had a gun in his hand. And we're not hearing about his heroic story. We're still hearing about. Comment?
Sorry, I really want Mitch to respond. Like, BLM they don't get out and protest every single death that's unjust. David Dorn did not get a protest.
I want Mitch to reply to this, and I also want to say, I want to remind you that in the last year since the riots started, more Black people were killed due to BLM riots than unarmed Black people were killed at the hands of police. Just to be very clear. Go ahead.
And the increase in crime.
So I see how I do this pretty often, and I see how the platform is skewed. I don't mind it. I see how you give Soonie much time.
I'm gonna leave. I'm leaving because I would really just like a real conversation, and I would love for you to answer the question.
So I can't speak, right? I actually agree with Kevin. Kevin was trying to move the conversation forward. It sounds like you and I found middle ground. People shouldn't die unjustly. I gave you examples to everything that Soonie talked about. I brought up BLM supported Jonathan Price, who was anti-BLM. He was anti-George Floyd. I also brought up Daniel Shaver. I brought up Tony Temple. You guys want to argue the nuances in the very minute that BLM show up. It's like you just cannot give credit where credit's due. And I just think we're such in a polarizing, high, intense political climate, that we just cannot just give credit to the other side.
Hey, Mitch, if I were to donate $100 to a Black-owned charity, and then I were to spend $50,000 on suing them and making sure they couldn't succeed, would that make me an okay person? Because we're not, you're forgetting that I did do some good. So,
can we pull this up since we're talking about BLM?
I haven't donated to BLM. What you can do is actually fight for causes that are righteous. If you see Daniel Shaver, you say, "Hey, somebody just recently died. I need to study the story." Why you guys are not providing solutions? You guys are saying such a small, minuscule. Russo, when you and I talked about on a previous line, you brought up Tony Temple, and I asked you, why did you bring it up? You really couldn't explain, but you concluded with saying, you know what, that's at the bottom of the list, and that's not really important to me, right? You see how dismissive you are to people that are killed at the hands of the police?
I think I said it's a fraction of the issue. We're going in a circle. We asked a very specific question.
We're not going in circles.
Yeah, we are.
So do you want me to say that BLM mishandled money? BLM has grifting flares to it? Yes. See how I can call it out? But you guys cannot find middle ground. That's why this conversation is very difficult.
Hey,
I try to find middle ground. I brought up Daniel Shaver.
Mitch, I'm going to ask one last question, and if you don't answer it directly, I'm going to have to end the show with you. So
I know, man. I know, Russo. Go
ahead.
I'm
going to ask you a question. So we're going to have this Shelley, the Shelley's question in a second, and then Soonie, keep that up there because I want him to respond to that. So before I do the David Dorn question, I want to ask you if. You said BLM, we got to say all the good things they did. They raised over $100 million. They haven't spent a single dime in the black community that's traceable or that they can mention. It ended up mostly going to, what's that? Okay, so what have they done? And please provide receipts.
They actually have 42 pages. You just Google BLM PDF for 2020. There's 42 pages where they put the money at. I disagree with some of the areas they put the money at.
Where's the link?
Where's the link? That's they had a plan. They had a platform of what they were going to do, and there was not a single dime spent.
Anthony, listen to me. I know you guys are hyper focused on BLM. That's why we can't get to solution. I'm telling you, this is what I'm talking about. You guys can't have a conversation.
No, we can, but
you dance around everything. I asked you a really direct question.
So I asked you. I had to circle back to Russo 4 times for a question.
Please, please. I asked you a really direct question. I specifically asked you.
Let me play your game.
I cannot talk with you talking, and I'm like 2 seconds from saying "fuck this show," and I never do that.
What's your question, Soonie? Go ahead, please.
Why did BLM not protest for David Dorn?
Because BLM
you said all lives matter. So why didn't they protest for them?
Because BLM cannot and is impossible to protest for every issue under the sun, Soonie.
Okay.
That's why.
Right. So but they can get out day in and day out for a year straight for a crackhead.
Can I ask a question, please?
Come on, bro.
So is there any
question,
is there any protest that you guys was on the front line for? Daniel Shaver, Tony Temple, David Dorn. Give me something. Give me something.
No, I don't. As I've already said, I don't believe that protesting really does anything. I've attended one protest, and look what it did. It divided the country because the media was able to spin it. They probably did that on some of the BLM.
He doesn't agree in that type of protesting. Only when it's.
He only believes in
their narrative.
I don't know when one day they end up doing both sides. I don't really know.
He doesn't believe in protest.
I protested the raising of parking fees at my college.
Good one.
Was it effective?
Good question.
No. It wasn't.
See, so protests don't work.
Still went up. Still went up by 25 cents an hour. Bullshit.
Okay.
Protests historically since MLK, if you look at the last 30 years of protests, all they do is they take the people that believe in a subject one way, they make them even further that way, and they make the people that don't believe in a subject further the other way, and it divides the country. The purpose of protest is supposed to bring people together. It does quite the opposite, so I do not believe in protesting, and as I said, the one time I was part of a protest, I felt great that day because I felt like I was a part of a community of people that truly still love the United States of America, and it felt good, especially knowing what we're going through as a country. And at that same token, what that protest did that day, whether you want to look at it as a setup or not, ended up being a failure. That protest on January 6th, no matter how you look at it, was a failure. Protests fail. Action succeeds. Getting into the community, donating time, donating money if you don't have time, and if you don't have money, you donate time. That's the kind of protest that works.
Protest is action, Anthony. But go ahead.
No,
you don't want to talk, bro.
Yeah, I mean, bring it aware. Soonie she just discredit everything I say.
No, you just said a very pointless comment.
She's very rude. She's not very professional, right?
You literally just you provided. First off, you're literally ignoring the fact you provided a complete and utter whataboutism based off of what I said about the fact that protests don't create any action. They're awareness based, and awareness is dead. Action.
So, for
It's the only
example,
thing that
like
works.
when Martin Luther King protested for the Civil Rights Act, that didn't work.
Were you not
It did,
listening?
too
Did you
well.
not listen to what I said 2 minutes ago when I said protests in the last 20, 30 years have been completely pointless? Because the whole purpose of it, when awareness becomes activism is when people don't know what's going on and you scream at the top of their lungs until they do. Right now, people are screaming at the top of their lungs for a fraction of the issues in today's society. And again, as I said, a fraction. It's not the amount of unarmed black people killed in a calendar year last year is less than Chicago in a month. That's why it doesn't. I'm not saying it.
I'm saying blacks. I'm saying it's a people's issue. There's black and whites that's killed. Anthony, again, I know this is connecting this to BLM, and you have to discredit anything black. But go ahead.
So white and black people. So there was. So let's take that's 2 months in Chicago are the equivalent of how many unarmed white and black people were killed by police last year. Soonie, go ahead.
He didn't come on here for a conversation. He came on here to say that we talk shit about black people. It's the same
talking point, Soonie.
Why are you talking over me? You call me unprofessional, but you keep interjecting anytime I open my mouth. There's a reason that I can't conduct a conversation with you like I can with so many other people. I ask you a question, you
So
give me.
you're not going to
go. You interrupted again.
If you want
I'm unprofessional.
Make your point, please.
I'm going to talk.
Mitch, have you heard yourself talk? You literally circle around the topic and avoid the conversation.
Can you mute him, please? Because I want to talk without hearing his voice. Why is it that when I speak, you have something disrespectful to say, but all these men on this screen, you have sat there and listened to most of their points. You didn't answer their questions, but you remained quiet.
By the way, this is only the second time I've ever muted anybody on this show. Ever. By the way.
The point is, we brought you on this show because we wanted to have an open conversation with you. And this has turned into you spinning this as if this organization spends its time talking about black issues only, and you're full of shit. I can't tell you how many cases that we've talked about that mainstream media didn't even put in front of your face. I remember when Jonathan Price happened. Me and Russo did a whole live show. Guys, we have to wait until more information comes out because there was no body cam. We had no clue what happened. So you didn't come on here to talk. You came on here to prove your point. That's why you brought your trolls with you, to be disrespectful like you guys always are. Thank you, Niall, for coming on here and having a productive conversation. This was actually a good conversation to have with you. But there's no talking to Mitch, bro. It's just not.
So I'm going to give Mitch one more chance to, and again, people are like, well, you've been cutting off Mitch. We cut off Mitch with one-word comments and continue the conversation when we're trying to keep it on point. There's a huge difference.
Said that shit, bro?
There, I don't know, somebody in the comment box. Niall has, I'm going to give Mitch just a split second to hang on. And then Niall said that he had a successful protest. So I want to know what the successful protest is. Niall, go ahead, unmute yourself. And then I'll unmute Mitch. Niall, go ahead if you can.
I will. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I will admit my protest was like very. It's not like small, but like in terms of, it's not like a racial issue. It's not like a class issue. So when the UK was going through the coronavirus pandemic, right? We have something called GCSEs, which are basically these really important exams that like 16-year-olds go to at the end of the year. And it's really important because if you don't get certain grades, you have to retake until you're 18, or you won't get into the college of your choice. You won't be able to do the subjects. Like, for example, if I fluffed my exams, right, I wouldn't be able to study what I am now, like politics, sociology, and philosophy. I wouldn't be able to. They wouldn't let me if I didn't get good grades. It's really important. And when we did a protest because the way they did it, they cancelled the exams because of the coronavirus pandemic. Whether or not that was justified is, meh. But the way they measured, so obviously if you don't have the exams, you have to measure what they would have got, predicted grades, right? And they were actually doing it. So people who bought private schools, I don't know if we have different terms, right? Private schools are schools in which you pay to go to. You pay their business run, their profit motive, right? And they did predicted grades for private schools as well. But they were doing it so private schools, people who paid, got average higher grades because they paid. So the government was giving out higher grades to richer families on the premise that they were richer. Just the assumption that they would do better. And there was huge protests. None of them actually went violent. Not one. Throughout multiple places. One based in London.
And what ended up happening with those protests?
They changed everything. So they changed the entire model. And this happened literally, like this year. They changed the way it done completely. So now the way they done the GCSEs was by teachers. So your teachers, who understands the students, who have been with them for 2, 3, 4 years, they would go, I believe this student would get this, and that's, in my opinion,
so the protest. So let me put it in a nutshell. The protest was creating awareness for something that most people on a high level didn't know about. Once they knew about it, they were forced to take action to change it. So ultimately, that is what I said earlier about the power of protest when there is not awareness known. For example, George Floyd, after they created the protest, they continued to protest after Chauvin was arrested and locked up, and they protested for months and months and months. So what's the point? All right, so Mitch, we're gonna go back to you, and I want to ask this. This is a very direct question. It cannot go left. It cannot go right. Shelley asked the question, I still want to know what your stance is on the police officers killed in the line of duty. And that includes, I want to include David Dorn, who is a retired police officer. I want to know what your stance is on, because you said every life matters. Go ahead.
David Dorn deserves justice. That's what you want, Anthony? Go ahead.
No, I want to know what your stance is.
I answered the question. David Dorn deserves justice.
Okay. Okay, so I'll take that answer. So we're in agreement there. What about police officers that are killed in the line of duty that's happening almost daily at this point?
It's not actually. If you look at the statistics for 2020, more cops died from COVID than it was line of duty. Out of like 335 cops across the country, Texas leads in that. 200 and some change of cops died from COVID, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a little less, but you're close. But they died. Just so you know, they died. They could have caught it in the line of duty dealing with criminals. Correct?
Well, possibly. Anything is possible when you make these assumptions, Anthony. So, but I like to go back to your question about the protests. So you was going right in the direction of my point. You said BLM kept protesting and protesting, and you actually admitted this earlier by saying BLM got Derek Chauvin convicted. So even in your own words, you're proving BLM protests did work. Now you're going to disagree because you're going to disagree with the conviction, but yet you did show.
Oh no, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with the conviction at all. To be very clear,
in your own words, you said BLM protested and got Derek Chauvin convicted.
I think that they forced it. There was no choice for a fair trial at this point. I think there was some very questionable things discussed, including his drug, the actual drug toxicity, which everything in the beginning said that was a very big player in what killed him. And for some odd reason, the person that with the witchmahoozy, the autopsy was a little bit shifted. But regardless, there was no other choice that they had but to convict and have a very long sentence. There was nothing that could be done. Now, do I agree with the conviction? Yes.
Was BLM protest not effective, or was it effective?
It got a man found guilty of a crime he shouldn't have been found guilty of. There was a reasonable doubt. Trust me, if you were in Derek Chauvin's shoes, you would want a fair trial. That did not occur here. There was more than a reasonable doubt. I am an anarchist. I am more than anybody else probably on this screen. I am against police brutality and police powers. And even I thought what they did to that man was a failure of justice, right? He was taught that. What matters is at the end of the day, he did not receive a fair trial because there was more than a reasonable doubt. That is all you need.
Kevin,
yes, there was. Yes, there was.
Actually, two supervisors says they do not teach kneeling on somebody's neck like that.
And then there was another man who was brought in who said that is absolutely in there. There's another person who was brought in and said, actually, his knee looks like it's on his back shoulder blade, which is what is taught to basically every police. That doesn't. This doesn't matter.
And this was tested.
The fact of the matter is that a reasonable doubt is the fact that we can have this argument. The fact that we can have this argument is what's called a reasonable doubt.
No,
at the end of the day,
it's only a reasonable doubt for you, Kevin, because you don't believe that Derek Chauvin should have been convicted. It's only a reasonable doubt in your mind. It's already been tested and challenged in court.
You're speaking for me. I would appreciate if you didn't speak for me. I think that every cop that kills a man. We want to talk about Daniel Schaefer, who was killed in a hotel, just crawling on his stomach across a hotel carpet. Do we want to talk about Ryan Whitaker, who opened the door to the police knocking on the door and shot him because he opened the door at 2 a.m. with a gun in his hand? And he was shot dead by the fucking police, okay? This is what the police get away with in our country, okay? Like, I am all about this. But what Derek Chauvin did, it was wrong. I think he probably should have been convicted, but what was laid out by the department, what was laid out by the testimony was more than enough to give me a reasonable doubt that he was probably taught this and that this was probably allowed, even though it shouldn't be. He was found guilty retroactively. If you had been taught to do something that was then later made illegal, and then you were found guilty of it even though when you did it, it was legal, do you think that would be unfair? Because it seems to me that would be very unfair, and I wouldn't want a justice system that thought that was okay. Because at the end of the day, he was found guilty. Because if he was not found guilty, Minneapolis was going to burn.
Kevin, you taking the conversation to a separate direction. My initial comment was to Anthony about how effective protest is. I used his own words to show that protest does work. Right?
And I said it worked well enough to get a man killed, to get a man sent to prison for 22 and a half years.
And that's the best I'm going to get from you guys because, again, we're not objective here. So that's the closest we're going to get. But Anthony proved himself that protest does work.
That's called extortion. Kaecey, go ahead.
Here's the thing, man. Like, I've been listening to you all night, and my thing is I'm looking at the scenario. I wish everybody the same rights and freedoms that I wish if I was ever in a circumstance, I would get. And Derek Chauvin did deserve the right to a fair trial. There is a lot of things that are question marks. There is known people that were in the jury that were wearing Black Lives Matter shirts weeks prior to the trial. That is known. That is not a fair trial. They are biased. And you can't have that. The other thing is the judge should have sequestered the jury very early because of how public this was, and it wasn't done. Now, I'm not saying Derek Chauvin should be let free, so let me be clear. He should not. There should be some accountability there. I don't know what, honestly, there should be, because as a human being, you should understand, like, hey, this guy hasn't moved in like 3 minutes. We should probably look at something. And so, yeah, there should be some accountability there. Now, when it comes to were the protests effective, the protests affected his fair trial. And that's what I don't like. If you ever were in trial, I wish you would get a fair trial. Because if I take that away from you, I also take away that right from me if I'm ever in that circumstance. I will never wish to take away someone's rights in those circumstances and say it was right, when I know if I get in that situation, it's going to be taken away from me and handled the same way. You can't do that. And that's what I'm seeing a lot of what's being done around BLM and all of this stuff is they're not being handled in the same manner of what people wish they would, that people understand could be held against them later. And when you look at past trials. And so that's where, when it comes to this, man, like, we're talking fair trial. We're not saying he needs to be let free, cut off the cuffs and let him run. He deserves a fair trial. Do you agree?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and answer that if you want, Mitch. Okay. So I'll tell you something. The fact that we're taking away rights from police officers, like putting a knee on somebody's back in certain ways, and even chokeholds that unfortunately killed one or a few people along the way, what that's leading to is situations like Rayshard Brooks. It's leading to situations where police can't do their job. So it's all hypothetical. Let's make sure that we're not being too forceful. But then at the same time, well, we can't shoot him. Oh no, we can tase him. No, but we can't tase him. That could kill him too. Let's make sure we just point a gun at him, see what happens. There's so many issues with the way we're dealing with policing that are leading to all of these bad things happening. Do I think the system is imperfect? Yes. Do I think that there are people on a yearly basis that are killed that should not be killed by police, white, black, Latino, etc.? Absolutely. Do I think that number pales in comparison to the other issues going on in this society? 100%. We're moving on from this topic. Unless you have one last thing to say, Mitch, I'm going to give you a last word if you would like it.
Sure. I think we can walk and chew gum. We can tackle multiple issues at the same time. I'm not sure why you have to try to quantify how important or not important things are. They may not be important to you because, again, you already don't have a history of protesting. So obviously there are things out there that you don't have any issues with. And so, but most importantly, I heard from everybody here that what Derek Chauvin did was not right. Right? It went through due process. He got a trial. The evidence was put on display, and he was convicted. I'm not sure why you guys think, again, I'm sure
it was an injustice. That's why.
I'm sure we're going to talk about the election at some point, how that was stolen. And then you're also saying the Derek Chauvin trial was stolen. But yet, why you guys can't focus on the narrative for what it is? You guys say
that is the pot calling the kettle black.
You're saying there's no opportunity for any police reform. Looking at Derek Chauvin,
I never said no. I'm Mitch. I firmly believe in police reform. I believe there's a lot of money that should be invested into police. I believe as though that the policemen need they need better training. They need situational awareness. And I think more money needs to be invested in body cams, body armor, all these different things to make sure that it exonerates them. But I also think they need to be allowed to do their job, plain and simple, because at the end of the day, they are still human, 100%. Niall, are you putting your hand up for something? Go ahead.
So yeah, in terms of like police reform, funding the police, I don't really disagree with funding the police, but in terms of would you say like the police in the way it works in my country and your country needs to change the way like fundamentally it works?
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we have.
So what would you change, and what
I just said it. Training. I think training needs to be better. I think, and there needs to be more money that goes into the equipment that they have. They need to keep it modernized. And I really do think that honestly, they should be trained in psychological issues a little bit more. And some police departments are. I think there should be more training on de-escalation. And I can tell you right now, based on the viewpoint that people have for police, the fact that police officers are being assassinated regularly at this point, I'm not going to say daily, but regularly, the people that are willing to sign up to be police officers right now are not the ones that we want on the police force. So this continued shitty narrative that all police officers are assholes are causing police officers by the droves to retire, to quit, to stop. The ones that are probably the peaceful ones, the ones that are going to have a decent conversation with the person they're trying to arrest. So the people that are going to be joining up and signing up to actually take the baton are the people that are going to use the baton in a bad way. Unfortunately, that's just logic. It's common logic on who in their right mind right now would sign up to be a police officer, and unless they're like, you know what, fuck it, let's go in there and let's get shit done. It's dangerous.
Just one
real
more thing.
quick.
In terms of like, I agree more training, I agree more funding, I agree modern equipment, but like, I mean, I was hoping for something more specific, right? So when I would talk about police reform, when I would talk about that, I'd look at empirical evidence of like models in other countries. So like, for example, the Norway, right? How they have this system where their police officers also have they train for 2 years, which is much longer than the US ones, and they're also trained to be social workers, right? To understand people, and it makes it a lot better. So, for example, the prison guards as well, they're all trained as social workers and police officers, and their recidivism rate, I think I'm saying that right, is 20%. Well, yeah, it's a really complicated, it's a really weird word, but theirs is 20%, while within 2 years, while the US is about 68%, and England being about the same. So what I mean is, like, I don't know if you wanted to go by empirical, evidence to look at other countries to see, okay, they've done their police in this way. And I think Norway have extremely high funded police systems. And also when it comes to ACAB, I hate ACAB. Okay, ACAB is the dumbest thing ever. I agree with you just wholeheartedly on that.
Yeah. So first and foremost, what is Norway's population? What is America's population? All right. What is Norway's ethnic breakup versus America's ethnic breakup? Norway's a highly homogenous country. It's a very small population. I think actually Oklahoma has more people than Norway does. So when you're trying to compare this, we have a population of 338 million. This stuff doesn't scale. Okay. We have over half the population of Europe as a whole. And it's broken up over an area that is way greater than Europe. We have a very different cultural makeup to our country. Everywhere has different little pockets. What you're talking about there, the reason they can have that kind of policing in Norway is because they have a different culture than America. They have a different society than America. They have a highly homogenous society. They have a society that has a lot of trust in their government. America has no trust in our government. That is bred into us. That is why we were created, because we don't trust our government. That is behind everything that America does, is a distrust of government. The original 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights comes from a distrust of government. This idea that the government is trash, that the government isn't going to be able to do anything right. And so when you're talking about policing, the problem is we have way too many laws. Like, I can ask anyone on this board, how much would it cost for you to be like, okay, cool, I'm going to break into this person's house, take their guns away from them, hold them at gunpoint, all because their girlfriend said that they were a little bit crazy. How much would I have to pay any one of you guys to do that? Probably a lot less than cops are paid now to do that in certain countries or in certain counties, because we have too many laws on the books. And we have this distrust with the police. Therefore, what comes from it is this: people don't know. Like, you get around a police officer, you don't know if you can be arrested, because, like, I don't know what laws I'm breaking at this point, and there's too many laws. And so what we can do to help the police out is say, hey, look, don't break up a party on a Saturday afternoon, okay? Don't put a gun to someone's head because they didn't use their blinker when they were on the freeway, this kind of stuff. And so if you want to know what would really help police reform, it would be reducing the laws and increasing community engagement. But
so I jump in really quick. So Kevin, I agree with that. I think simplifying our law is key. Also, I will also add, I do believe in not so much training, but I think we should pay police officers more money. I know cops that get paid $60,000, $70,000. I think for what they do, it's too highly risky, right? I see officers taking bouncer jobs after they get off work.
They get paid what they can afford.
Right. And so I think what you pay for what you get, right? So I would even propose seeing cops getting 4-year degrees and paying them a stipend to come into the police force. And we can get better quality, more educated officers, right? And pay them a higher salary. Also, as it relates to Kevin, cases like George Floyd, I don't think we should have our top senior police officers. I think we should have levels to policing. I think we should have non-emergency police officers, and we should have emergency police officers. So for like a counterfeit bill call, that call should have never been routed to a emergency police officer response, right?
So why does that make Derek Chauvin guilty?
You're taking me down a different direction. I'm trying to agree with you here, Kevin. I'm trying to find.
I know you are.
I'm trying to find middle ground.
I know what you're trying to say.
Go ahead, Mitch. Keep going.
It's very hard, man, to find middle ground. I
apologize.
Okay. So I thought we moved on. So I'm trying to move on, trying to find middle ground. So you look at not Derek Chauvin, but you look at George Floyd. The police was called for a $20 counterfeit bill. Now that's a petty crime, right? I know I had to report things before, and they say, you know what, this is not an emergency call. Please find emergency number, right? And that goes to a different person, right? They don't send police out for every petty crime. That could have been resolved differently. You look at Eric Garner selling cigarettes, that could have been resolved differently. And so my overall point is, I think we should pay officers more. I think we should advocate for them to get, more education and pay them more money. And we should pay them bonuses based on their performance. I'm in agreement with that. I think officers are trained properly. I just think we need to get better quality officers.
Okay, I think that's a good place to go. Niall's going to end this conversation. And then we're going to move on. The one thing I will say to you, Mitch, in a perfect world, everything you said is fantastic, and I agree with it. The problem is we don't know. Sometimes it's not just the George Floyds of the world that are using a counterfeit bill. So you don't know when the situation is going to escalate to an emergency situation. So yes, I agree that there should be levels, but it's so hard to judge that in advance. And you say the word to get better police officers. Yeah, it's all well and good. I agree. And if you think they're trained well, that's all well and good. But again, this is also you said 4-year education. This is a very long play. This is not something, and people are expecting police to magically all of a sudden, like Niall, I think, is playing a video game and back, to magically get a armor suit of education and better policing like you're playing a video game. Like, oh, you just spent $700. They're better now. That's not the way it works. Niall, end this subject for us so we can, please, God, move on.
Yeah. So sorry about that. I'm just a little bit ill. So in terms of like so I got down two of the points for Kevin in terms of like how homogenous Norway is. Yeah, whole Norway is definitely more homogenous. Norway is about 80% Norwegian, and then 20% other, and America is about 70%. So it's not as actually a big of a difference as I thought it would be. 10% more homogenous. I don't think, considering it's only 10%, I don't think that's a really huge point that can like we can point to and be like, oh well, you know, they're more homogenous, but it's only 10%. Secondly, sorry,
Neil,
in terms of
Niall, sorry, I got to interrupt you. That's actually, so that statistic is based off of people that are from that country. It's actually a slightly different statistic. So the predominance still is a Caucasian from that. So you're actually basing it off of different kinds of European. I've looked at that same statistic. So it is a little bit different. So homogenous is not, in that case, is not including people that are from other European areas, just to be very clear on that statistic. Go ahead.
I mean, I get that I need to look into that definitely then in more detail, because obviously, I mean, for example, German people and French people, you can classify them as pretty similar, but again, you wouldn't go to like Eastern Europeans and be like, yeah, well, they're and the Western Europeans and be like, yeah, they're homogenous because they're together, because like the Eastern Europeans are a lot different to the Western Europeans in terms of culture and everything like that. But also in terms of like population, right? Was it population? Sorry. Yeah, in terms of population, yeah, Norway, can America achieve the same type of police system and criminal justice system, stuff like that, as Norway? No, no, they can't. But can they work towards it? America has the biggest economy in the world. Just I think China is in second or about to overtake. I don't know yet, but I mean, America has the biggest economy in the world. You cannot achieve the same as Norway, but you can make steps. You can make progress using the Nordic model. You get to a more Norwegian criminal justice system instead of just, you know, the entire thing.
Very good. All right, I get you, and I thank you for coming up with that. All right, so I'm going to ask the question to the group, and I know that again, this is probably going to be a question, and Niall, I don't know which way I'll stand on this one. But my question is going to be: Do we live in a white supremacist country? And right here, I think and I've always stated, especially a lot lately, that we live in a country of a lot of good and a lot of evil and shitty people. I don't think it is as race based as the media will tell you. And I want to play this clip real fast because this is at the New York Pride Festival a couple days ago, where there's just a big melee of bullshit going on, which just seems to happen too often lately. And if it is a white supremacist country, would this shit actually stand?
No, Sam.
All right. That's just an example. We've showed other videos that are similar, that are just shit like that happening way too regularly. Again, this is not me pointing out that black people are the problem. This is me pointing out that I want to be very clear, I do not think black people are the problem. I think people that think that we live in a white supremacist country are the problem. I think people that think black people are the problem are the problem. I think that we need to realize that there is good and evil. So who would like to take this first on whether or not we currently live in a white supremacist country?
I'll come out with that.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So perfectly framed. I like how you guys frame on your show, right? It does you well. So obviously I don't agree with the video. And so it's ironically, if you show that video and you show the January 6th riot, you will see much more participation with the cops waving people into the Capitol, right? And you can see how people are saying Ashley Babbitt is a hero. You see, there's a distinguishing difference between the two. Now, let's circle back to where the root of this question really comes from. It really comes from Tim Scott's speech. He says, America is not a racist country. Do you guys remember that speech? Right?
Yeah, of course. It was great.
Okay, so that's what his question is rooted from. But yet, even Tim Scott didn't make a clear argument for it, because he said in the same sentence, he was pulled over even as a politician 20 times. And in about 254, 255 years that we had the Senate, only 11 black senators have been elected. And one of those black senators is Tim Scott. Even in 2021 says he's been pulled over 20 times. When he proposed the not the George Floyd bill, but the Republicans' version of police reform, he had to beef up security, right? Why? Because people didn't like the fact that he was proposing a policy that they thought was caving into the left. And so, again, what is a racist country is very subjective. I can see Tim Scott's argument that is not a racist country wasn't very strong by the fact of him saying he was pulled over 20 times, even as a politician.
Just as a heads up, I want to state this, and then Kevin, you can go. I'm 38 years old. I have been pulled over 20 times in my lifetime as well, just to be very clear. Now, I think once in a while, and I have friends that have gone through it. And I think I disagree with Soonie on this one. I think she agrees with me, but I do think I've had friends that were quote unquote pulled over for being black. But
if I'm not mistaken, I think I think Tim Scott says in the past year, in 12 months time frame,
that
he was pulled over that many times. Am I not mistaken?
No, I guarantee you, you're mistaken. 100%. Unless he considers the police escort pulling in front of him to guide him to his location, getting pulled over.
And I'll come back and I'll circle back to you on it. But if I'm not mistaken,
thank you, Jen.
You say he's been pulled over 20 times.
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, but okay. So I first and foremost think that you need to watch an interview between Dave Rubin and Larry Elder, because Larry Elder specifically addresses this, where he talks about especially when black people want to say they get pulled over more. The Department of Transportation of New Jersey actually went into an in-depth study that found that unfortunately, black people are more likely to speed, more likely to drive without registration, without a license plate, without a blinker, with headlights out, without a seatbelt, with heavily tinted windows. Basically breaking every infraction, basically every reason you would get pulled over. It was unfortunate, but black people were more likely to be doing that. I really suggest you watch that interview. It opens a lot of eyes.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Kevin, but even though you're making that point, my point here, your question is America a racist country?
No, it's not.
He made an argument. This is his argument.
Yeah.
Why would he bring up an argument that he was stopped 20 times in the same breath that he's saying this country is not racist? Do you not see the conflicting statements in that?
Maybe because the reason he was pulled over is because he was speeding 20 different times.
Let's have Soonie answer that question. Soonie, go ahead.
Chelly's a Chicago police officer. Ricky and Chelly, I love you guys. Chelly, can you see what color anybody is before you pulled him over? I'm going to let her answer that in the chat. And while this police officer is answering the chat, she's been on the force for over 20 years. Let's talk about Tim Scott. Tim Scott is pandering to get the black vote. Period. Point blank. Nobody likes Tim Scott. He is stinking in the polls. Okay, if you look at his polls, I don't care. I think he's crap. I think you're talking about I've been pulled over 20 times and the Capitol Police claim they don't know me. Bro, you have been there for how long, and you're telling me these people don't know you?
Maybe in the first week or two.
It's pandering. Chelly, do you know what color somebody is when you pull them over?
So I'll let Chelly answer that. And I think there are certain instances, and again, Soonie and I don't always have to agree on things. That's the key. I think people think that we're all part of some cult and we agree on every single thing. I think there is an instance based on process of elimination of. Okay,
we're about to destroy this narrative with this drop them all black shit. Come on, bro.
But
it's a Latino police officer on the force for over 20 years.
I've only been pulled over like 4 times, and I'm 27, and it's mostly because I stick as close to the rules as I possibly. I'm the guy who uses his blinker on turns when there's literally no one else in the area, and so I've barely ever been pulled over. But like when you talk about that, when you're trying to say is this country racist, you're going to actually have to point out legitimate differences that can only be explained by racism, because we live in a country where 88% of children that have two parents are in the middle class, are growing up well. You're living in a country where in communities where education is valued, crime is low. It's like when we start talking about, is this country racist? It's like you can abide by the critical race theory and look at every single problem. Okay, so I'm going to say race. Okay, cool. Not going to look any further. You can take that approach, but it never actually will ever address the problems that exist. And so long as we even consider, unless you're trying to say that there is some kind of that race and culture are the same thing, you can start to actually identify, hey, there's communities that happen to be white that have these cultural problems and they happen to have high crime. There are communities that happen to be black that have these cultural problems, they happen to have high crime. You can start actually pointing out what the problems are and be like, oh, wait a second, maybe these people's race doesn't actually matter. Maybe it's the fact that, they're having children at 15 and the father's going and leaving and going off to prison. Maybe it's the fact that the parents don't ever care about the education. Maybe it's the fact that, the parents spend every single dime that they earn in wages. Maybe it's the fact that, you don't have a community around you. You don't have a situation where the mother can go off to work and know that their child is going to be watched by someone who next door or down the street that has a care and commitment to the community.
So, Kevin, do you think racism exists?
I do believe racism exists.
Okay, so then possibly all examples you gave could be attributed to racism. Like you gave a lot of assumptions. One of the assumptions could be racism, right?
Yeah, and it wouldn't be right.
Okay, all right. So now we can go into statistics that shows that blacks are, there are systemic issues in the community that show.
Yeah, and it's called not enough fathers.
Black sounding names.
Not good schools.
Black sounding names have less opportunities to get jobs or discriminated against. You look at the home appraised values for African Americans versus whites is much higher, right? You look at the contacts with police, you can see systemic issues there. We talk about police brutality only in shootings. Police brutality is also when you're arrested wrongfully, when you go to jail wrongfully. You see how many blacks are on death row that are released all the time for
whites too,
convicted,
and Mexicans and Asians and white
you're
people.
Making my argument stronger. You name minority.
Yeah. I said white people as well.
Thank you.
I'm glad that Asians are a minority though now, because then we can start to say that, hey, also minorities happen to be the highest earners in this country, happen to be the lowest poverty, happen to have the highest education statistics. So maybe this country isn't exactly racist. And then if we want to break this down even a little bit further, I mentioned every single race because that happens with every single race. The broken justice system applies to everybody. It's not racial. The only people driving this racial divide are people that are trying to manipulate. The reason why BLM is not out there protesting in favor of Duncan Lemp and Ryan Whitaker and Kelly Thomas and all these other people is because there's an intent to divide. You can't have people realizing, wait a second, maybe this government that we have that continues to oppress, that continues to put forth policies that expand their power, that continues to put forth policies that put people in prison for what is so-called a non-violent crime, something that shouldn't exist. Either you're infringing on someone or you're not. If you're not, then what's the problem? When it comes down to is, if you're going to try to call this country racist, you cannot be continuously pointing at issues where there is another explanation that actually provides a better explanation than race. If you're going to tell me, oh, why is it that Baltimore happens to be one of the poorest countries or poorest places in America? It's not because it's majority black. It might be because in 2016, they had 14 schools where 0 students were able to read or do math at grade level. Maybe it has to do with the fact that in 2016 they had hundreds of murders in their streets and thousands of shootings.
So, Kevin,
maybe it has to do.
Is that
that's not racial?
Is that possibly because schools are funded based on the taxes from the home values in the area? Right.
It's interesting. It's interesting you bring that up. Do you know what the national
homes? Mitch, you asked him a question.
Yeah.
You asked him a question. Let him answer the question.
I just want to give him the whole complete answer. But go ahead.
Do you know what the national average per capita per student spending in the United States of America is? I'm assuming not. $13,500. You know what the world average for the only countries they measure is? It's about $9,500. You know what Baltimore's is?
What is it?
In 2019, it was 16,500. And it was the second worst school district in America behind Detroit. Detroit, you want to know how much, if the national average is 13,500, what do you think Detroit got if Detroit is the worst school district in America?
I'm going to guess 18,000?
Close, 19,500. So these school districts are receiving more money. But what it comes down to is when you start looking at how these school districts are spending their money, and then you have to start also addressing the community where these students are at. I suggest we move over to a voucher system. But most of these school districts have teachers unions that enable their teachers to not have to work. Do you know what? Do you know how much money the New York, I think it was their 13th school district, spent in 2015 on teachers just to not teach? How much they paid these teachers?
No.
It was about $12.5 million to teachers not to teach. Okay, Baltimore has these same things. They have a teachers union, but yet every time the Republican suggested voucher system is brought up, Democrats shoot it down and say it's racist, it's horrible. It's like, okay, well, how about this? You continue to tell us how much money plays into people's success and how much your upbringing plays in. Well, when out of Baltimore's 39 public high schools, 14 didn't have a single student able to read or do math or do science at grade level. And of the other 25 schools, it was about 2%. So you're going to say, hey, single black mother in this neighborhood, which it's most likely to be. So we're not going to give you the 16,500 to send your child to a school that might actually prepare them for college and prepare them to go on, that might have a higher success rate, such as you see in New York with their charter schools.
I can switch over to education for you. I just want to make it clear. You didn't make an argument that this country is not racist, right?
I am making the argument continuously on you. You're positing, hey, look at the school district. School systems are broken. And it's the Democrats that continue to allow them to be broken.
Okay,
right?
But now let me make the argument on education. Look at, for example, like Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
You know what Kentucky is ranked in education, Kevin? Let's play numbers, because you know a lot of numbers I didn't know. How much federal funding do you think Kentucky gets per person?
Probably a lot, because most school districts do.
Okay, it's about $10,000. How much do you think California gets?
Probably a lot, because most school districts do. I know California does.
Actually, $12.
No, 12? California gets more.
No,
$12.
$12 per federal funding in California versus $10,000 in Kentucky.
Okay. So how much does California get for federal funding for every other program they have up to and including all of their various pensions, all of their various
$12.
Okay, so they get California draws billions of dollars in federal funding for its other programs.
Let me get to the point, Kevin. Kentucky is ranked last in education, not just a city, but the whole state. You look at Mississippi. Mississippi is high in poverty, last in education, high in crime, right? And that's a Republican state. You go to Alabama, also ranked last in education. These are not cities. These are entire states.
True. But if you go to every single blue city, they're among the worst in the country.
I like Kevin. He's honest. I appreciate Kevin.
No, but if you go to every major city in those states that are probably blue, they're going to be at the bottom. But if you go to every single major city in America that is blue, it will be towards the bottom. Outside of Miami, who happens to have the strongest charter and private school program with the voucher program in America, spends on average $8,000 per student and has the highest success rate in Miami. Yeah.
It's actually not. It's actually New Orleans.
Miami is the most successful of the major metropolitan areas in America.
I don't know how you benchmarking success. New Orleans has the biggest.
We're probably looking at different studies there, bud. But either way, fine. We'll agree. They're near the top.
After Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans became the biggest experiment for charter school, right? So that's a Democratic city. So they believe in school choice. The problem with school choice is that you actually leave kids behind because you can't afford to put all the kids in one school. Kids have to
give them choice. Give them choice.
But when you do choice, you create lottery. When you start creating a lottery, you start creating cherry picking. You cherry pick students. Some students going to be left behind. My approach with education is really we should focus on the community as a whole, because I believe, if you have a poor community, you're going to have a poor education and you're going to have poor teaching. poor way for kids to learn. So
agreed, Mitch. I 100% agree with you, Mitch. And to say what you're saying, we talked about this the other night. But the fact is, until you can create the massive change in the community, things that we talked about, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole about what Trump was trying to do that was going to take a lot of time, you have to actually have a Band-Aid on the solution until you can stop the bleeding, or I would say a tourniquet. Vouchers are that tourniquet. School choice is that tourniquet until you can fix the community. The community, as we said, like the game that Niall's playing right now, isn't just going to magically all of a sudden you put $1,000 in and poof, it's going to magically appear perfect. That's just not the way it works. We're done talking about this real quick. I want to bring up Shelly. Shelly wanted to have a conversation about police with Mitch. So Shelly, welcome to the show.
Yo, my homie's name is Chelly, man. It's
Chelly.
not Shelly. It's
Chelly.
Chelly.
Hey, leave my white friend alone.
Estoy un gringo.
Shelly, how are you? Welcome.
Good. How are you guys?
All right, doing well.
So Shelly, go ahead. You were making a lot of comments in the box about policing and about the situation that we are going through with police, that you were disagreeing with what Mitch was saying. Can you explain a little bit about, or even ask the question better? Why is it not a big issue of how many police are quitting, how many police are being killed?
Right. So questions were kind of just back going off of things that he was basically saying in a conversation. He was driving his points home about BLM. I don't know what led up to that conversation, to be honest, but it came in kind of like right when I started hearing the whole thing about policing, etc. So my questions were, because you wanted to make sure that, does Anthony feel that way since he drives so hard on BLM, like him not being in the middle? That was one of your statements you said. So my question to you is, do you have that same passion that you want Anthony or Soonie or anyone else on this panel to have for BLM and be in the middle? Do you have that same view with police officers getting killed in the line of duty as you do for police brutality?
Yes, Shelly. So you guys gave me several examples, and I say David Dorn, for example, deserves justice.
So
I also said police officers should be paid more.
You said educated police officers should be paid more.
Well, I say we should offer officers the opportunity to be educated and get 4-year degrees, so that way they can have a path after they become police officers, because eventually police officers leave the street and they go into management within the police, or they may go into something in the private sector. I think if we can put more focus on training police officers to be more educated, instead of saying like physical police training, like warrior training, which is banned in Minneapolis, that the Minnesota mayor banned, but the police union in Minneapolis still taught the police officers in Minnesota to do, and that's how Derek Chauvin was able to use that particular training.
Hold on 1 second. Mitch, did you say that police needed better training?
I say education training.
He said educational training.
Right.
Okay,
right.
sorry.
And then they should be paid more.
Okay.
I have deeper answers around it. I like to get more people from the community also policing. So when I say kids, when we talk about trade schools, I like to offer a 2-year program for kids out in the community to give them an option to say, you know what, if you want to be a police officer, you want to take up a trade, go to a 2-year school, and we give you opportunity to slide into the police force. And these are people that can police their own community. So I'm pro-police.
Okay, so I want to say that, you know, that you talked about Minnesota and the Derek Chauvin case. You said that they were banned against teaching. I'm sorry, what was the word that you used in regards to their training?
Warrior training?
Warrior training, correct. So I don't know if you've ever been to a police academy or ever have looked into a police academy. There is no such thing as warrior training. There's called defensive tactics. They have a use of force in each and every police department in the United States of America that they follow. You can Google them, you can look them up online. That is what they are trained. They are trained tactics to defend themselves, to try to use the least amount of force reasonable and necessary to effect an arrest. You talked about Minnesota and you said that that was not their training, that they trained Derek Chauvin a certain way, but yet that was not legal. if you go back to when Derek Chauvin actually came on the job, and I do not support Derek Chauvin holding him down for 9 minutes. I don't know a police officer who was. I want to say that first. But I will say at the time that he came on, and you go back and you look to what was being trained, he was taught that. That's what I'm going to say about that. So for you to say that he was not trained that, or it was illegal for them to teach him that, that's not true. And as far as what was it, war or what?
So you could be correct, and that's the reason why they banned the Warriors.
I am. I'm very, very, and I'm not trying to be a smart ass. I'm just being very.
No, I'm just.
The one thing that I'm super educated on is policing.
So what I'm just telling you is that this has been reported. You can read it up. There was a big controversy when George Floyd first was killed that the mayor banned the warrior training. He went funded. The police union in Minnesota, who the president of the union was a pro-Trump supporter.
I feel like when you continue to say stuff as like warrior training, I feel like you're kind of pushing those narratives so that's the words that get out there. You're playing with words. It's basically semantics at that point. There's no such thing as warrior training. They are a semi-militant department. And
but the media is going to make terminology like warrior training.
I'm not talking about media. I'm talking about what he's saying right here, right now on this show.
Got it.
So for me, you also said that in Minneapolis, they wound up defunding their police. And you know what they're doing right now?
Refunding
their police. You know why? Because they realized defunding their police was not working. I only brought that up because you brought it up. I didn't even want to talk about Minneapolis or George Floyd. What happened in George Floyd? I don't know what you're showing me.
Oh, it's
it's by
CNN, bro.
It's a CNN article calling it warrior training.
Again, it's a term that the media, which is what I stated, will push. And but what I said, I only used it because that's what he said. So I wanted to kind of push away from that, because I think that if we all are trying to have a conversation, then we need to stop playing with words. Like, let's call a spade a spade.
Liberal news media.
Hey, can you please look at the fact that it's in quotes? It is in quotes. That is not.
I don't need you to show me articles.
Yeah, Mitch, you're literally showing mainstream media putting warrior.
I appreciate your comments, but I can hear that you're coming in with a very political bias. We can argue.
Holy shit!
We can argue.
Mitch.
Can I get a statement?
Stop talking, Shelly. Hold on, everybody, stop talking. First off, you literally just said she was coming in with a political bias. You're literally telling somebody whose job as a police officer that it's politics while you're showing articles from CNN where they're quoting terminologies. You do realize how incredibly ignorant you are when you say that. You're literally degrading her profession. You've talked shit about her profession this whole time we've been on the show. And the fact that you right now just degraded her by literally saying, but this article says, and she's telling you the way it is absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to unmute you, but that was where I draw the line.
Can you leave it muted while I finish talking, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead.
So, Mitch, I came here to have a conversation. I didn't come to have a debate with you. I didn't come to have a little cat fight with you. I don't cat fight with people just because they think different of me. Oh, he left now.
No, I put him in back until he put the stupid phone down.
Oh, okay. So, I came here to actually have a conversation with you. I didn't come here to catfight with you. I came here just to talk about some things that you were talking about that I want you to know are not accurate. You talked about having educated officers and being paid more. Why would anyone in today's climate want to be a police officer when they are killed at an unprecedented rate in this day and age? There are zero incentive to be the police right now. I live in a city that is
Mitch, she's going to say her point.
Filled with crime. Matter of fact, I just posted something on Facebook today. In June alone, in my city, just June, we're going to talk about June, there are 73 deaths in June. 73. One of them is an unknown race. Besides that one, 60 of them are Black. 60 of them are Black. 48 of them are men. The other 12 are women. 8 are Latino, 4 women, 4 men, 5 white, 3 women, 2 men. All that adds up to 73. 5 of them were children the age of 16. And guess what? The majority of them are Black. Out of 73 people killed just this month in my city alone, they were Black. And guess what? None of them were killed by the police. So
Okay,
my point to you is that with the same energy that you want Anthony and Soonie and everybody else on this panel to look at Black Lives Matter through a moderate scope, is the same way I came to give you a perspective so you can look at policing through a moderate scope. And I can tell you, I train officers for a living. I have been on this job for almost 25 years. I work in the community that I grew up in, which is one of the hardest neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. So I decided to be the change I wanted to see in my community. I decided to put my money where my mouth is. I walk the walk each and every day of my life. And guess what? I am female and I am Hispanic. So I am a person of color too. And guess what? All those things, little things that you were throwing out there, those little words that I felt like you were using, gaslighting, you know, we can't have a conversation if we're going to treat each other like we don't matter. Everybody matters. And when any life is lost, whether it's a Black life, a Hispanic life, a police life, it is tragic. And we should be talking and having a middle ground. How do we fix this? And I can tell you right now that the educated, super educated kids come out of these really fancy schools. Guess what? They are not as great as an officer as my kids that grew up in the neighborhoods and can relate to people in these communities.
Appreciate it.
That was my point.
Mitch, I'll let you respond, and then I have an overriding. Just I'm realizing something as we're all having this conversation. But Mitch, go ahead and respond.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate the time that you're giving me. Shelly, appreciate your feedback. I don't have a long, lengthy response. Your question to me was, why would any officer want to be a cop? First of all, we already have officers already cops. We have officers graduating to being cops every year. I hear you're a police officer. You have more experience than I do. But I can tell you, I know police officers. I can tell you many a time they say, man, I don't get paid enough for this. I just seen a fight break out here in Houston, and the fight was on the right side of the street. The officer was on the left side of the street. I pulled up and said, hey, they need your help. The guy says, I don't get paid enough for that. Right? So I think if we want to make policing a viable career, right? We talked about policing. We talked about protecting police officers. We gave them training. I think they should be paid more. I think if we put more money behind good quality police officers, we get a better product. I think that's what I think. I think the education should come on the front end, not on the back end. I agree with that. I don't sound like you and I find middle ground with that. I don't see where we disagree.
I actually, that's, go ahead, Shelly.
No, I just wanted to say that I agree that they do deserve a lot. They do deserve more money.
So I realized something through this conversation. So what I'm realizing is, and I think Kevin actually said it earlier, we don't disagree on a lot. What we're disagreeing on is the how to and what needs to be fixed most. And like most human beings and most Americans, or, you know, most people from, you know, England as well, we all have a different background that took us to where we are today. So we're all going to have different things that are the most important in our lives. And for what Soonie and I do, we find a certain Soonie, Kaecey, Shelly, like Kevin, all our group is pretty similar. We find something, we want to discuss it, we bring it to light, and hopefully we get a following so that we can do events like we did with Take Back America, so that we can raise money and then create more knowledge. And I don't want to say awareness, knowledge to what's going on. So Mitch, I have a very important question for you, because again, I do think we agree more than we disagree, oddly enough. But I think the ultimate thing is we are leveling what is more important to us. We've stated why we think it's important to show that we don't live in a white supremacist country. I think by putting that out there and by explaining why we feel that way and showing things like...
I didn't hear a strong argument, but go ahead.
What's that?
I didn't hear a strong argument for that, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So the whole concept is we have our reasons of what we are doing, and ultimately it's to protect the Shelleys of the world, to protect the police officers, to create an air where misinformation from mainstream media so that people instantly start protesting in streets for shootings and stabbings that are found to be justified don't happen, because there is a loss of life, and then there is a loss of business, there is a loss of structure, there is a loss of livelihood, etc. So my question for you, Mitch, because it's very obvious what we do, and I've seen a couple things with you. We've talked a couple things. What do you want? What is your goal? What do you want your voice to change? And it does not have to be the same as ours for us to think that you can have a lane. But I want to know, what do you want?
In a perfect world, I wish we all could just find middle ground and show compassion to other people.
No, that's not a solution. What do you want out of this? What do you want?
Out of what? Out of this platform?
What do you What do you want to change?
Specific question.
You've got a magic scepter, and you could change one thing in this world, or two things, whatever. You have this, and you could go bing, and it changes. What do you want to change?
I would instill compassion into everybody's heart. I think compassion starts with everything. I think when you have compassion, you have empathy, you have perspective, you have understanding for others. That's why you and I and some of us can't get through some of these conversations, because we can't understand the other side. That's why we can't get to solutions. So it may sound like a weak argument to you, but I'm just trying to give you a deeper answer to why we can't get to middle ground and why we can't get to solutions, because we can't see the other person's perspective.
So last thing, and then I'll go to Kaecey and Soonie, but I want you to answer this, Mitch. So that compassion, that is a that is a change that is made. What is the final effect of that? What is the better compassion? What does that lead us to? What is the byproduct?
So when you can show compassion to others and you have understanding, empathy, and perspective, you can solve problems better. You can work together.
What's the problem? What's the biggest problem you want solved? What are you looking to change?
The biggest problem is division, Anthony. All our problems is rooted from division, right? That is the top problem. You have sub problems, which is obviously racism. You have poverty. You have homelessness. You have PTSD with veterans, right? You have home ownership issues. We have a lot of issues, but we can't solve these things because we can't come together. That's why if I had a magic wand, I would instill compassion.
I'll respect that answer 100%. Kaecey, then Soonie. Go ahead, Kaecey.
So I definitely respect that answer, and I appreciate it, because I feel very similar. But I'm going to be a little blunt here. If you want to instill compassion, and you want to actually have people to find middle ground and have a really solid conversation, why all the snarky remarks when you get to talk tonight? That is not having compassion. That is not being the example of what you need to do to be able to make the change in the world. Shouldn't you do that?
Should I answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Quickly, go ahead.
Sure. So you say sly remarks. Again, if you had perspective and understanding of where I sit, this whole platform was skewed against me. I had very short time to speak. The answers, you see the question that Anthony Russo just asked me, how he had added layers and layers and second guessing my answer, right? So I'm coming on your platform. I'm one of like 5 people. Neil jumped on. He's leaned more my way, but it's the 4 of you guys, or 5 of you guys. I come on your platform solo by myself to try to bring some type of clarity, some type of perspective. But yet, I don't feel like I was given a fair opportunity to speak. So that's why you might get a little pushback from me. And plus, Soonie and I have a little relationship going on. Anthony Russo and I had some pushback before. So there's already some context way before this call. That's why.
But my point, and then I'll be done with it, is more of, this is what we try to do, is have compassion. We try to have these civil conversations with people. Those snarky remarks are not necessary when it's been going on since the beginning. And I understand there were prior conversations, but you're bringing things up from the past when we have all been mostly civil, man. Like, there has been not much in trying to attack you or change anything in those
I
regards.
wasn't fully civil on this. This is the least civil I've been on an episode.
Well,
I'll take ownership for that.
It started civil, and then
So
it went off the
he
deep
just
end.
negated your argument, Kaecey. So I
You
appreciate
negated my argument.
No,
Yeah.
I specifically spoke for myself. Again, as a whole, I do think the reason why I got aggressive is because you were literally gaslighting everything I said. But again, I think we're missing the point because I think we're coming to a place where we're having some understanding, and I don't want to get away from that at this point. We've argued enough on this episode. Kaecey, do you mind if I go to Soonie or Niall? Let's go to Soonie real quick, and then Niall. Go ahead, Soonie.
Compassion and accountability go hand in hand. Love is correction. Your parents love you enough to discipline you when they see you doing wrong. That's love. When you don't love somebody and you don't have compassion for what they're going through, you just go ahead. I'm going to hand you off to the world and you figure it out. Where I think we I guess kind of go off the rails with each other is you aren't interested in the accountability aspect of what we're saying. I can have compassion for every single one of the people that you mentioned, which I do because they're human. Anytime somebody is dead on my Facebook, you know what I say? Another American is dead. Because that's what it all comes down to at the end of the day. I don't care what color they are. But I definitely believe in accountability. If you messed up and your life got put on the line, it is just as much as your fault as it is the other person. If I messed up and did something ridiculous and put my life on the line, I am accountable 100%. You can still have compassion for me and tell me you fucked up. Period. I don't think we disagree on much other than you don't like our delivery and you take to heart different topics we talk about. I don't care if somebody is white or black or Asian. Like, I don't care. We talk about the crime that's going on in the community because it's bad. I'm sick of seeing little kids dead. I'm tired of Chelly reporting every week the stats in Chicago because she's a police officer there of all these kids dying on a weekly basis. Every weekend there's a mass shooting. I have compassion for those people. I can understand what's happening there, but I also believe in accountability.
Niall, go ahead.
Yes, so apologies for this because I have got a list. It's essentially like one of the important questions that I just really would like to put forward my opinion on. So one of the main ones was, is America a racist country, right? Is it a white supremacist country? That was one of the foundation questions. This is something that actually me and Mitch have spoke about and actually disagree about. See, for me, it will be how you define a country, right? So for me, I define a country by its people. If you define it by its government, well, if the government don't have any people to rule, the government's useless. If there's no people on the country, then there's no one there. It's not really anything. It's just a piece of land. So to me, a country is made up by its people. Now, for America to be a white supremacist country, that would at least mean that the majority of people in America would be white supremacist. I do not think that. I don't think America is a white supremacist country because of the way I define what a country is. Now, one of the things that I think me and Kevin, I like Kevin, but I think we have the most contentions out of anyone here. I don't think Kevin would disagree with that. So I think Kevin, during one of your things with like Mitch, you spoke about critical race theory in a downing manner. As someone who studied critical race theory, I can tell you critical race theory, at least to me and what I've studied it and what my experience is, nothing against white people. I mean, my entire class was white. Like I live in a very suburban area. The entire class was white. And a critical race theory for us, I define it as a sociological analysis on history on how that impacts socioeconomics today, like on like race, right? So how does race play a part in history to how we are today? The conclusion, yeah.
So critical race theory was created in Harvard Law School as an application to legal theory in America about the way America's laws actually apply in searching through for racism through America's history, specifically America. Critical race theory is a specifically American thing that has then been applied. So it would appear very different in Britain. I just want to make that specification there. Like critical race theory, as started by Derek Bell and his constituents, was an application of this theory to the American legal system in legal arguments.
I do believe that the same, I do believe, and I've spoken to people in America who studied critical race theory. I've seen, most of the teachers, I've seen lectures and stuff on it. I would say that critical race theory in America is basically the same as it is in my country as well. I'd say it's basically the same. And like I said, it's just an analysis through like a sociology analysis on race and how that comes into play through stuff like socioeconomic outcomes of today. That's
where only race is the explanation.
No, it's looking into race and how race plays a part. It's not saying race is the only explanation. It's not saying race is the only explanation. It's saying race
by definition, maybe. By definition, it might not say that, but by practice, it does say that. Yes, I have read plenty. Okay, like I've also done the research into this.
Moving on from CRT. And moving on from CRT.
I apologize.
And one of the things was like, if America's such a racist country, how do Asians do so well? Well, I don't think Asians is a very good metric to go by, right? So the reason is because Asians that come over here, typically Chinese, the only way they really get to America, most of them come here for university education, right? And in order to get here for university education, you already have to be smart. Like the Asians that come here, they come here and they go to the highest universities, so they're smart. That's
an incorrect.
That's
statement.
Very racist, man.
Yeah, that's an incorrect statement. So Niall, the predominance of I'm going to correct you. The predominance of Asians that have come over to this country came over with absolutely nothing, no education. Most of them didn't even speak English, and they've created wealth for their family. So maybe this day and age, the Asians that are You're muted.
Nowadays, a lot of them are coming through shipping containers into American ports.
Right. But the ones that you're talking about with the university are the ones that are going to, major university schools, and they're starting in a pretty good position. But you're discounting millions of Asian Americans that literally came from absolutely nothing. So that's an invalid argument, unfortunately, or discussion point. Go ahead. You're muted, by the way. Oh, there you go. No, you're good. My bad.
I'm fairly certain that the Asians that come over here, come over to America, come on the basis of getting an education, going to university.
No,
that's one of the main. Yes. What? Then
I'll need these statistics on that one. That's incorrect.
Real quick, you also know that Indians and Pakistanis and Iranians and these people all qualify as Asian as well.
Asian, that's true. That's another valid point.
They all fall under the Asian category when I say Asian.
Yeah, they're Asian. Yeah.
Yes. So they're it's not just the Southeast Asian that you're speaking of. I'm actually talking about the continent of Asia and all the people that make it up, not just what my stereotypical view of the word Asian is.
I mean, I said China just because I think that's one of the highest.
India.
That's one.
Right there.
Yeah, India's probably a little bigger. But anyways,
can I pivot really quick? Yeah.
Let Niall go ahead and finish real quick, and then Mitch, you're next, and then we'll wrap up the show. Have everybody say their final words.
School vouchers. I think school vouchers can work. The only problem I see with school vouchers, right, is do you not see it as like say for example, you give there's a really poor school with really poor students, and you give them school vouchers. Do you not see them just abandoning that school? What happens to the school? Is that just an empty building now? What happened? What happens? You have a bunch of students now.
The kids are at a better school.
Students, so now you have a bunch of students
at a better school, getting a better education.
If you move a group of students that are poorly educated at one school and put them to the other, you're going to have denser classrooms. You're going to have it's going to have denser classrooms. You're going to have teachers teaching 40.
That's the way it already is
at once.
Yeah, that's the way it is in America.
You're making it worse.
No, how am I making it worse? Maybe this school goes from having 2% to 5% able to read and do math. Maybe at some point they'll reach the average private school at 90%.
So this is the unfortunate occasion where, Niall, you don't live in the United States, so you don't quite understand exactly our systems. But yes, you're right. The people will be left behind in that school unless they are pushed. At the same time, they're still getting funding, so they still have the opportunity for an education, but they're going to have to work harder for it. The parents are going to have to push them, which in a lot of these cases doesn't happen. But they're moving to a school. If the parents are motivated enough, they're going to move to a school where they can actually get an education, and it's not overfilling these schools as a whole. There is a few instances that way. All right.
Most importantly, it incentivizes the school itself to be better. That's what it comes down to.
I just don't see it as a solution, right? Because again, it will be moving one.
I don't think it's Niall. I said earlier, I don't think it's a long-term solution. I think it's a tourniquet to fix a bigger problem. But while we fix the problems that I agree 100% with Mitch, which is fixing the economy in these areas, building them up, finding different ways to do it. We don't necessarily agree on the ways, but building up those things, again, that's not going to happen overnight. But while that is happening, if the parents want their kids to have an opportunity for a better education, that's the purpose of the vouchers. It is not a long-term solution. Last point, Niall, and then we're going to go to Mitch.
Also, yeah, so for example, in and how much money we spend per student, I mean, it's true that just because you spend more money on a student doesn't necessarily mean it's actually beneficial.
No, we're learning.
It has to do, we learned that, like the pretty examples you gave of the models. But I would also go as far as to say that it's the model that shapes that, but also you do need high funding. Like for example, like the places with the best educations in the world, metrically, in terms of metrics, they do have for example, Norway, $21,993 per student. It's a lot of money. I'm not saying we just need loads of money per student, but I'm saying that we need to change the model as well as putting more money per student.
I don't disagree. That was a good point. All right, Mitch, go ahead, and then let's have our final points. Mitch, all you, floor is yours.
So I just like to pivot, and we can save this for the next live. We don't have to dive into it now. But I know every time we talk about what's the hot topic to talk about is always black on black crime, Chicago. When you break down the numbers, 500 murders, I know you guys had the slideshow. I know you had that prepared. I know you guys, that's your go-to topic, right? But 500 murders in Chicago. What's the next city? I think St. Louis do another 300.
Memphis.
I think Detroit, Memphis. Okay. Memphis does another 200, 300, right?
300. Yeah,
300. Okay. So we were about 3 cities, 1,500 people, right? And we can add on top of that, I think total is about 7,000 murders across the state, over 40 million black people, right? That's a very, very small number. The actual number one killer of African Americans is actually healthcare, lack of healthcare, right? That's lung cancer.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Under the age of 40, the number one killer of black people
it's homicide.
Is homicide.
It's not.
It's
lung cancer.
Under the age of 40.
No, under the age of 40. Cancer and it's heart disease.
Under the age of 40, Mitch.
For white people and for Asians and for Mexicans, it's car accidents. For black people, it's homicide.
It's not.
Mitch, listen to what we're saying. Hold on, Mitch.
I will show you the statistics.
Mitch, listen to what we're saying. We're in agreement. Mitch, what we're saying is it is for under the age of 40. Now, for all of the black race, black population, yes, it is what you're saying. But for under the age of 40, it is homicide.
Okay, so let's roll. Let me find, again, middle ground with you guys, right? That's the key word here. Let's find middle ground. Let's roll with your numbers. Again, the number's about 1.5 million people that die. You're talking about 7,000 people that die from between 40, black on black crime, right? But 1.5 million, a combination of both black and white people die from heart disease and lung cancer. That's a drastically big difference in numbers. So again,
they're older though.
No, it's not only older, it's poor health, it's poor access to health care.
Which usually kills you older.
No. Access to health care is the number one reason why people die.
In their 60s and 70s, yes.
No, not 60s or 70s.
For black people under the age of 40, it's homicide.
I'm going with your narrative here. Now you're screwing the numbers all the way up to 60.
I'm putting some honesty in the numbers.
It's not. We can look at, I will send you the numbers after we get off, but the number one killer is actually lack of access to health care. So
over the age of 60.
I'm going to focus on 7,000. Let's just look at the 7,000 number over 40 million black Americans. It's a very small number. It's just that murder is so egregious and it's been politicized so much by the right because that's the way they recruit people into the Republican Party. Because
it's the number one killer of the youth.
So they can say it's a multitude of different things that kill you, right? If you don't have opportunities, in these
But
areas.
the most likely thing is murder in black communities.
Didn't you say we could walk and chew bubblegum at the exact same time? Didn't you say that? So this is you said that regarding under 20 murders a year. So why not talk about 7,000 and then also talk about the issues with healthcare? I think they're both very big issues.
Because you guys focus on where you should spend most of your time at. You always minimize or maximize different things, right? So I'm telling you, in the grand scheme of things, 7,000 murders, over 40 million Black Americans, less than 1%. If you really want to address people dying, both Black and white, because I'm always addressing issues on both sides, it's healthcare. So again, I'll pass the mic back to you guys. We could talk about that and deep dive on the next call.
Soonie, go ahead.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate here for a second, because you were talking about over 7,000 homicides. It's not really that big of a deal because we're dying due to health issues. We are the number one recipients for healthcare recipients for diabetes, and the second one is HIV. Both are very preventable. We can prevent those things. When you look at what the nation is talking about, they're not talking about diabetes, heart disease. They're not talking about anything health-wise that I can notice on mainstream media and what they're pushing out and disseminating to the public. I want to pull up these numbers from 2021 for police incidents that have to do with Black people. In the year 2021, 73 Black folks have been shot. Okay, and if we go to unarmed, it's 4. So the argument you're making, which I wholeheartedly agree that we have a lot of problems within healthcare, but the argument you're making is 73 people trump 7,500 homicides within the community, and we should pay more attention to police brutality and healthcare and ignore the 7,000 that just murder each other. Whether it's because of poverty, situations that they're in, it's understandable. I get it. Why not pay attention to the more alarming issue, which is we are completely destroying ourselves. Essentially, we're committing our own genocide against our own people on a daily basis. Healthcare is important, but 73 versus over 7,000 people in a state, because we're not accounting for all the cities that actually have all these high number of murders. Put it on a national level, it's actually really scary. It's super scary to look at these numbers and then try to pinpoint where is the priority, and the priority is not even being put up here. It's being put down here. Let's not talk about that. We got to talk about other things. I just wanted to play devil's advocate for a minute. And yes, we can even add abortion. You know, that's the youth right there. They're not even getting a chance to live.
500,000.
I mean, there's a lot of things we got. We got child molestation, right?
Yeah.
So we can add a lot of things that are not talked about that is far greater. I know you come with your numbers, but again, when we talk about police brutality, you're talking about unarmed shootings. We say 4, and I explained earlier, police brutality means a lot more than that. We only talk about shootings. We ain't talking about the people that unjustly goes to jail, unjustly convicted, unjustly sent to death row. So that's why it's called the prison pipeline, right? That's because it's a revolving door. And so we have to talk about the whole gamut of what police brutality looks like. But we talk about pure numbers, just pure numbers. Healthcare is by far, the lack of access to healthcare by far kills far more Black people and white. I'm not sure why that's not part of the argument here. Also, the second biggest piece is child molestation. So we talk about saving kids and saving babies. That should be a big topic, but it's not.
I want to talk about that.
We talk about it all the time. We were that was the part of the Q group that we were actually down with, was the human trafficking element. And that, I mean, people were screaming at us for being nuts, and we were talking about the hashtag Save Our Children. We did that forever. We talked about it forever. We still do, and we still think there's issues. And actually, I condemn Q because of the way that they were infiltrated, because their main point in the very beginning was helping children, and now it's some weird shit about when Trump is coming back in office, which is absolute garbage. So
Can I make a point really quick? I'm sorry.
Kelly, go ahead.
So I just wanted to touch when he said, like, when we're talking about police brutality, we're not talking about just the shootings. He talked about like unjust arrest and them being placed in jails, you know that the police don't actually put people in jail. Police affect the arrest, and then it gets turned over to the justice system. That is not a police issue, because someone can tell us anything they want to tell us, and we have to take their word for it. So we arrest them, we put them in jail on signed complaints, etc. They go before a judge, and then the justice system puts them in jail. So that is not a police. I don't know how that would fall under an umbrella of police brutality. I could see you using like the police beating someone's ass or something to that extent as police brutality, but them wind up going to jail and doing jail time. That's a justice system issue. That's not a police brutality issue.
Charlie, can I ask you a question, Charlie?
Yes.
Okay, so do you believe that is a protect the blue code that happens in the police department?
Do I believe there is now? No. Do I believe there was at one point in time? Yes.
When do you think the blue wall no longer exists?
So I don't. Again, you like to use certain words that I just
whatever you want to call it, Charlie. We don't have to argue about the words protect the blue or this
thin blue line, whatever.
Whatever you want to call it.
Not the thin blue line. The thin blue line stands for something totally different. You're talking about the code of silence, is what you're referring to, Mitch.
Okay.
Right?
My bad.
So do I believe that at one time there was that? Yes. Do I believe that had set a lot of things in place that we're dealing with now, that we're dealing with stuff that happened decades ago? Yes. I do.
When do you believe it no longer exists? When do you believe it stopped?
When do I believe it stopped? When people like me started putting our money where our mouth is and started fighting back.
Okay, so you see, I've
been on this job for 24 years, and I have never allowed anyone to touch anyone that didn't deserve it or put their hands on them first. I've never stood by and let anyone do anything that I would not want done to my family, because again, my family lives in these neighborhoods. I have 76 first cousins in this neighborhood.
So what is the rate? You guys are great with numbers. Is there any statistics that shows how many?
Who are you guys? Like, we're having a conversation. Mitch,
I'm talking to Anthony. Right, Charlie. I'm talking to Anthony, Kevin, the guys with the statistics. Not you, Charlie. I'm sorry. I apologize. Right? When I say you guys, I'm talking more so to Anthony. He answers statistics. So I'm asking,
Kevin's better than me.
Does anyone have statistics that shows officers snitching on other officers? What does that look like? Does anyone have those numbers? Because you told me it no longer exists when you started working for the police force.
No, that's not what I said. You're putting words into my mouth.
Okay,
what I said is that I specifically did not allow it, because people who love to talk about police brutality do nothing but sit on their computer and show articles about CNN and all these other news things, but have never walked a day in those shoes. That's when I'm going to clap back and let you know I've never allowed it. So no one is going to do it. Good cops are not going to allow bad cops, and I'm never going to say there's none, right? There might be a few here and there. I do not know them. And guess what? Do you think that the 1% of bad cops in today's society are going to do anything in front of people who are very outspoken like me? I am from the hood. I'm not afraid to fight back. I will clap back at them, because I don't want anyone treated like that. Again,
so, Charlie,
that's the reason I took this job.
Charlie, you do, excuse me, I'm sorry. You do agree that there is police corruption that happens outside of where you work, right? You don't work.
No, that's not what I said.
No, I'm asking.
How can I speak on something? How can I speak on something that I know not of? What I am saying is, from what I know, I can only speak based on my experience. I can't speak for everybody else. But what I am saying is, all this new stuff that's coming to the forefront on as far as reform, etc. We have been in reform since the day I started this job. Since the day I started this job. The only reason it's a talking point now is because it's been politicized. And that is the God honest truth.
But Charlie,
cameras have been around in many departments for many years.
But Charlie, I asked, does the blue wall still exist? You said no, but when I started working, you made it more personal. So
no,
then I'm
asking
you on a macro.
That's not what I said. You're combining two of my comments to fit your narrative. That is not fair. That is not what I said.
Can I
Do not gaslight me.
Can I Okay, Shelly, do you believe that there's a blue wall that still exists in the police department?
In Chicago Police Department, no.
Okay, do you think there exists in other police departments?
I don't know because I do not work there.
Okay, so is it safe to say just because you don't know that it could still possibly be happening, right?
Anything is possible, right?
Okay.
There could be aliens coming from another planet. That's what I'm saying. You're trying to gaslight me to say what you want me to say, and that's not going to happen. What I'm telling you is look at police departments. There are cameras across the United States of America.
Shelly, I'm asking because there's evidence.
Faces.
But
Okay,
Shelly,
but what I'm
Go ahead,
evidence.
Mitch, and then Soonie.
I'm not bringing up aliens. I'm bringing up real examples. No,
you're not. You didn't. You asked me a question. You said, "Could there be a possibility?" That's a hypothetical question.
Shelly, I know because you're a police officer, you feel like I'm attacking police.
I don't feel like you're
attacking
police. But I'm going to speak my
Shelly,
experience with Chicago.
You've been very clear, Shelly. But I know, Mitch, go ahead and go ahead and speak. I know what you're trying to ask, and I'm not going to. I'll answer it for you, Mitch, because I don't think Shelly. Again, we're speaking in hypotheticals, but from a logical perspective, because I ask people to think logically. Do I think that there is an element of police corruption still in this country in different police departments? Yes, there's corruption in teaching. There's corruption in everything. Is it a little bit more dangerous in the police? Absolutely. But do I believe that 99% of police officers are doing their job the correct way? They're not believing in this wall that you called it, or whatever you want to refer to it as.
The police call it. Well, go ahead.
Okay, then I don't know what. From what I've always heard, it's code of silence is something I've heard. So
code of silence. That's
code of silence. Do I believe do I believe that is still an issue in small numbers? Absolutely. To think that things are completely gone is ridiculous. To think that racism is gone in this country fully is ridiculous. To think we're a racist country is two very different things. Soonie, please.
That is what I said. I did say 1%, right? I did give that number out, right?
I'm not sure where you guys are getting 1%.
I did answer
I will
the
roll
question.
with it. That's fine. I'm not sure where you're getting 1%, but I'll roll with it. But go ahead.
Okay. Just devil's advocate here again, and this is my closer. You had mentioned death row and how Black men are unjust when it comes to that area, right? They're treated unjustly.
I wouldn't say unjustly. You can show this evidence of definitely an unfair due process for people that's on death row. They are released
disproportionately, is I think what he referred to it as. Disproportionately.
Okay. So here is my counter. We have a vice president who purposely kept DNA from being tested for several Black men, probably some white men too, from getting that evidence so they could be released from death row. This is a person that you voted for, Mitch. You voted for the top cop in Cali at that time, bro, and she blocked DNA evidence from being tested
because she was just smoking weed and listening to Snoop,
and she locked people up for that too. How can you say that this? I don't understand how this is an issue. Okay, and it's obviously passionate for you, and that's cool. But you're kind of like defeating the purpose of your argument. It's counterproductive when you vote for the same woman that decided to block DNA evidence from possibly helping those men get off of death row. I don't understand.
Can I answer that,
Soonie? Absolutely.
Okay, sure.
And that's my closer. Thank you guys for coming today.
Thank you, Soonie. I appreciate the platform. Thank you guys for bringing me on. Sound like we found middle ground on a lot of things. So as it relates to Soonie's comment, so I don't agree with Kamala handling those two cases where, she was found doing some wrongdoing with those two cases. She's also was, when you look at, I won't even bring that part of it, but the fact that she handled those two cases wrong, I agree with you. I can condemn Kamala Harris. Now, let's talk about the bigger picture. Donald Trump, I don't believe in the death penalty at all, right? I just think we get it wrong too many times. Now, we haven't had the death penalty happen at the federal level since 1988. Donald Trump executed on his way out the door 13 people. There's one case that sticks out where the case was extremely 50-50, right? There was new evidence exonerating this guy, black gentleman, and he still was executed. So I think about 4 of the 13 men were executed under Donald Trump, where we get it wrong all the time.
Okay, so you said Donald Trump executed those people.
Yes.
If I bring this up, it's going to be going back and forth. But Obama did the exact same thing.
Obama didn't execute anyone. He had. I just told you, executions didn't happen at the federal level. The federal level. You can have executions on the state level where the governor can override it. At the federal level, we haven't had a federal execution since 1988.
I'll be totally honest. I have no idea what you're talking about, so I'm looking it up.
Sure, no problem.
I mean, if at the end of the day, I am personally against the death penalty until you can prove to me that every person who's on death row 100% belongs there. Like in Florida, we're either going to have the 100th person executed or like the 31st person exonerated kind of deal. But I do understand that at the same time, these crimes that these people are being executed over. If you're going to have the death penalty, who cares who's pursuing it? If it's the federal government or state government, if the death penalty is legal, death penalty is legal. Someone commits a crime that deserves it, then somebody's committing a crime that deserves it. Doesn't matter where it's happening, who's carrying it out. If you hold that the death penalty should be performed, then who cares which part of the state is performing it?
Okay, so the actual statistic is there was 3 between 1988 and Trump's presidency, so it's very minimal. And I believe as though 5 people he did have federal executions on, and with that, it broke a 130-year precedent, which I believe is why you think it was never done. Again, it was very rare. So technically, it was a precedent of pausing executions amid a presidential transition. And this is actually more of a Department of Justice move, not necessarily headed by Trump saying we need to kill these people. So it was his administration, so he should take obvious responsibility in that. But I think we're misconstruing the issue.
I think that Anthony. We palm in the ground. I appreciate it, Anthony. Thank you.
If that's the case, Shelly, you took it out of my mouth. We need to have Obama apologize to Libya for bombing the fuck out of these people for political gain. And I know this for a fact because my husband works on the F-15 jets, and they had bomb dust all over them.
So
over them for months, For months they surged.
Libya and executions are not the same, but we can.
Yes, they are. You're executing innocent people.
We can discuss that on the next slide. You guys,
sure.
Obama executed Anwar al-Awlaki, who's an American citizen.
To justify executions here in the States.
I'm not justifying it. I'm saying that there's blame to go around. Like you said, you want to be middle ground. So let's talk about what Obama did as well as Trump. That's fair.
Obama's didn't involve a trial, so I mean there is that really cool.
Well, we should have started off with Obama and not bring up Kamala's execution record.
Yeah, but Kamala is currently literally our vice president. That's why we brought it up, because it's current. Niall, go ahead and wrap up the show on your end. Go for it. Sorry, buddy.
Love to say, Kevin, we agree. This is astonishing. I'm so happy. I hate the death penalty. I think that's probably just to do with my culture over here in England. The death penalty literally has been abolished for ages. I disagree with the death penalty across the board. It's awesome that me and Kevin finally agree on something.
I think you agree with all of us now, because I don't agree with the death penalty either.
Yeah, Niall, we're gonna have an episode called "Youth in Revolt" in the next couple of weeks. So, and I've got a couple of young conservatives, and I want some young. You're a middle grounder, and I would love to bring on possibly one young Democrat as well. Those I probably like throwing darts on a dartboard. It just can hit anywhere, and I'm sure we'll find a couple. So Niall, I appreciated having you on. I know we didn't let you talk much, but when we have that show, we'll have you. Definitely, I want to let the youth speak on that one. I'll only control as much incorrectness as I can see, but you were very good. I appreciate you. Let's see. Mitch, we're going to come back around to you because I want you to make the close with me. Kevin, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Again, this was a really great panel. I know I get a little bit of passion when I'm talking about some of these topics because, I'm an emotional guy, so obviously I'm going to get very impassioned, but I really appreciate you taking the time out to actually come on and come to a platform where you were going to have people who very clearly disagreed with your stances, who are going to be very much in opposition. So thank you for that. I do want to say once again, go.
Gosh, it's so good. Unfortunately, we ran out of time again with
You
Kevin.
always do that thing, bro.
I had to do it. Kevin, I'm kidding. Finish up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so go check out Liberty Revolt Media. Like, share, subscribe. My second part of my article is up, and we just continue to love all the support we're getting. And thank you guys again for having me on your show tonight.
Kudos. Thank you, Kevin. Let's see. Chelly, go for it.
Yes, I want to say that it was a pleasure talking to all of you, although we, sometimes we agree on things, sometimes we don't. Don't always agree with Anthony. I don't always agree with Soonie. I don't always agree with Kaecey. So, Mitch, it was nice to have a conversation with you where it doesn't feel like we're out to kill each other, because I think at the end of the day, for myself, I want the same thing for the people in my neighborhoods, and I want them to have good police officers out there. So I think in some ways we are on the same page. We just have very different views. And the reason I have my views is just because based on my experience. I work out there. I do the work. I put it in every day. So that's why we have a few different views, but it was great talking to you guys. Thank you. And I just want to mention one little thing in regards to schooling and stuff. I don't know about teachers unions in other states, but I know in Chicago they suck. And they need to stop worrying about filtering money into their own pockets and putting more back into our kids. That's one of our problems here.
If you want to watch a great movie, it's called Waiting for Superman. I've said it a couple times in the show. If you want to learn about the corruption at the level of teachers unions, and you want to understand why our education system is so broken in this country, Waiting for Superman is a fantastic documentary to learn more of that, to educate yourself. Does it have the spin and bias? Yes, that's what a documentary does. But it does also give some very, very core statistics and reasons why it sucks ass. Jelly, thank you so much for what you do. Keep serving and protecting. And thank you for popping on the show last minute and lending your expertise. Appreciate it. Kaecey, thank you, Chell. Kaecey, go ahead.
It was a good show, good conversation. Niall and Mitch, thanks for coming on and having a civil conversation with us. Like, I say civil because we can still talk. Like, no one rage quit and left. And that's what I mean by civil, is we can all be passionate about certain topics, and things can get a little bit riled at times, but we all came and had an understanding of people's opinions, and we've respected them and let them have their opinions. And so that's one reason why we do this show, is so we can talk about things and get that out on the table. But thanks for coming on, guys. It was a great show.
Kaecey, thank you for helping me moderate everything on the side, back and forth. If anybody was wondering why Kaecey wasn't talking as much as possibly usual, he always is there to make sure we have information and have all the production stuff, as well as also dropping some nuggets of knowledge when he gets the chance. Before I go to Mitch, Soonie, I know you started it. Are you good, or do you want to have anything else to say? Are you doing a live after this or anything like that?
Make America think again. That's it, man. I just want people to think. Be unbiased in your thoughts and think. And I don't know. I might do an Instagram live because Mitch agreed with me, and I think everybody needs to know this.
Wow.
I think this was actually quite productive. But Mitch,
we need
ahead.
a round of applause.
Slow clap. Mitch, go ahead, brother.
So I close out on appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak with you guys. Of course, I think the platform's a little skewed, but I still appreciate coming on. Right? I think we started getting better throughout the conversation. So, and I think we started finding some middle ground in some areas. So I would say this again. I go back to that magic wand question. If we could find a way to be more compassionate towards others, and when I say compassionate, meaning understanding other people's perspective, sometimes things may not affect you; they may affect others. What's not important to you may be important to somebody else. So let's hear people out. Let's look at all issues. We can walk and chew gum. Right. And so I think there's a lot of things we can unpack more, maybe perhaps on the next call if I'm invited back. So, but overall, I think we found some middle ground. Now is just how do we work through all the BS and get right to the solution? So again, once again, appreciate it. Thank you.
I think, Mitch, you need your own shirt that says I'm a lot to unpack. And then that would be your theme shirt. That's your go-to phrase. Mitch, before you go, I got a question, and this is going to bring me just to a final point. Because there was one thing you said that I stayed with me. Have you ever, in an argument or in a discussion, argument, debate regarding race, have you ever said to somebody, you don't know if a white dude says, "Well, I know this." Have you ever said you don't know what you've never walked in a black person's shoes? Have you ever said that?
Yes.
So earlier in this call, and I agree with that statement. I understand that everybody can only observe in somebody, just like I say, you may not know what it's like to have a disabled father, because I had a disabled father. Earlier in this episode, you were talking to Chelly, and Chelly said something, and you responded with, "But I have a lot of friends that are police officers. I know what it's like. I understand that." I know what it's like to be a police officer, and I've seen what they go through. You do understand that's the same thing as when you were to tell a white person you don't know what it's like exactly to walk in the shoes of a black person. You understand that?
Well, what I exactly said was police officers are always saying that they are underpaid. And
No. I'm talking specifically on this. You made a comment. And again, I think it's just the way that we speak. And I think that was honestly why we were all fighting so much in the beginning, as we were picking and choosing words. I was guilty of it as well. I think there is this element where we say certain things that unfortunately that are inflammatory to other people, that causes them to want to fight back. And I've made the same mistake. And I think there was a point in the episode, like you just said, you've said to people, you don't know what it's like to be a black person. You literally use that exact same resonance by saying, you don't know. I know what it's like to be a police officer because I have a friend that's a police officer and I've seen what they go through. And you did say it. I want to be very clear.
Well, I'm sorry, Anthony. I'm sorry to go back and forth, but that's not what I said. I said, Chelly, you're a police officer. You can tell me. I do have friends. They always are telling me that they're underpaid. Shelly, she concurred by nodding her head. She says yes. So I brought Chelly into that argument by saying, hey, you know about this more than me. Tell me if I'm wrong, because this is what some of my buddies are telling me. And she concurred and said, yes, police officers are always saying that they're underpaid. That's exactly the comment.
Yeah, okay, go back and watch it. But honestly, it's just one of those things that I think we need to be a little bit careful on. And again, I am including myself in that self-responsibility issue. But as a whole, Mitch, go ahead and finish up. Do you have anything else you want to say, or I'm just going to wrap it up?
No, I'm good. I mean, I just appreciate you guys bringing me on. Soonie and we had a pretty rough, a rough few days. It's been about 4 or 5 days. Anthony, you and I had maybe a rough conversation. Kaecey, I'm just getting to know you. Now, of course, I know you as well, Neil. So, but, because we're in a tested, challenging conversation where there's a lot of pushback, sometimes, people get frustrated. It could get intense. I appreciate you guys accepting someone to come on your platform. Again, it's not easy. I do this all the time. I don't do this for a living. I'm a banker for a living, right? So, but I just have to plug myself in these conversations because I just think a lot of things get lost. And I don't think the full stories are always being told. So I appreciate you bringing me on. But it's also understand it's not easy coming onto a platform that's not really built for you to be successful, right? You guys have your numbers. It's 4 against 1, right? You can mic me down. You can mic me up when you want. So again, I'm not going to, I'm a big boy, so I don't have a problem with that. But I appreciate you bringing me on. Continue to do what you're doing. Continue to be open. Continue to show compassion. Thank you, guys.
Mitch, appreciate you.
Oh, Mitch, I'm not a grifter anymore because you can tell that I'm legit.
Oh,
come on! Don't put me on the spot, Soonie.
Come on, man! You got to give me my props. Come on.
Yeah, you get a call off your boys now that all go around calling all of us grifters.
Neil was one of my boys. He came up and he talked.
Listen, me and Neil got personal beef, but you know what? Neil came on. I don't want to. Is your name Nal or Neil? Which one is it?
Well, it doesn't seem to matter what I say because everyone calls me Neil, but my name is pronounced Niall.
Niall. Okay.
Like the river, yeah.
Right. Niall, we don't agree on a few topics, which is cool. But he actually came here. He he had a disagreement. I had a disagreement. But look, I'm like, yo, you want to come on our platform? Come on here and talk. And he's like, yeah, cool. I don't have a problem with people. I don't like disrespect. I really don't. And when people get disrespectful, I will be the first one to pop back off. I can admit that about myself. But I'm not a grifter. And you got to give me my props now.
So I would like to come
fair.
back. I would like to come back with my shirt that says, let's unpack what grifting is, right? So I know we're trying to close out. I don't want to keep going back and forth, but there's so much to unpack with that. And I think we need to really do that so we can educate the audience. Maybe we can educate ourselves, and maybe we can find a place of compassion.
Agreed. Cool. And honestly, you're welcome back. And I want to let you know, I would love to have 3 left and 3 right on every episode to find people as brave as you, Mitch, and Niall, who I don't think is really left. I think Niall is middle, and I think
you haven't heard my economic stances yet. So,
oh God, well, the hair.
We have to talk to Niall about
Niall,
the LGBTQ. That's what we really have to talk to him about.
Well, he looks like a brunette Ellen, so I already know where that's going. All right, I'm just kidding. Totally a joke. Totally, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I like a little bit of comedy, but honestly, I think the big thing that we came to on this is the fact that it's literally we forget how important it is to stay in our lane. And I realize that everybody out there, and honestly, Mitch, there's people that I look at what they're trying to do in the community, and I'm like, holy God, they're making it way worse. I don't think you're that person in any way, shape, or form. And I actually give you credit for your stances on a lot of things. And I really just think that our hypercritical nature that we have in this country, and because of the way we've been divided, leads us into these fights when really it's like, you know what? You want to do good in your community. I'm going to challenge you to do better. I want to do good for what I'm doing. You challenge me to do better. And I think that's all well and good. And I want to thank everybody for being a part of this. Niall, I look forward to talking more with you. Mitch, you are invited again. Bring some friends. Again, I don't think Black Democrat lends an educated conversation point to this, because I just think he just wants to fight. Mitch, I think you're strong in your convictions, and I think you fight in a different way than we're used to. But I do believe that you ultimately want conversation and progress, and I appreciate you for being on there. Appreciate everybody for being on the show. Thank you guys. Be the change you wish to see in the world. This has been episode 56 of Truth Will Set You Free. Tomorrow night, we've got Jelani. Make sure you check that out for Change Makers. So check this out. This is one of our rare, and I know it's going to sound shocking, Mitch, one of our rare episodes with somebody that is political. Usually Change Makers is apolitical, but Jelani is a Republican in his state of Washington. Thank you guys. Have a fantastic evening, and I will see you all tomorrow.
Thank you.